Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs, your award-winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast. We are back on this January transfer deadline day special where, look, we start off with a number of our top quality guests. I'm joined by Patrick Tyrant. I'm joined by, of course, Italia pundit Simone Dell'Uomo here on this Last Word on Spurs. Because I know what's coming in the comments, let me just address this from the off. Yes, Paul O Keefe is going to be coming. I've got to make me laugh. Everyone's waiting for this face reveal from Paul, bless him. Paul will be with us very, very soon, as will Lee McQueen and Richard Cracknell. So on this show, in terms of what we've got to come, look, we can't just set up, guys. Look, we're not obviously hugely busy when it comes to this January transfer deadline day. What we will be doing is providing a review of the January window for Tottenham in general. Of course, Spurs, the only Premier League club I'm led to believe that have got 2 deals over the line. We'll be discussing a day in which we've seen Bryan Gil decide he wants to remain at Spurs until the end of the season. Postecoglou's love for him goes on. Liz is in the process, as we record here, of tying up a loan move to Seville. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. We know Spurs are in for, of course, a Swedish star that could ultimately be one of the stars of the future in Lucas Bergvall, but one that I have to say can be done outside of this January transfer window. Of course, any news on that, we'll bring it to you right here. And guys, we will be looking ahead as well to Everton to come in what, as I'm sure you know, has been a frantic month for us here on Last One on Spurs, where quite honestly, I cannot wait for the break. But it has been enjoyable. I want to say a massive thank you to the wonderful audience that have tuned in every step of January along the way. These guys have been featuring prominently and heavily throughout January. Patty, love to have you alongside me, my man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm brilliant. I'm just as eagerly anticipating or waiting, shall I say, for POK to come through as well, just like everyone in the comments. So yeah, man, I'm looking forward to tonight's show. You know, it's a bit of a dead rubber for us, essentially, like in terms of today is in transfer deadline day, but we've had a decent window, which we will touch on. But yeah, always a pleasure to be on. Obviously, I've got Crackers now in the house. Simeone, don't steal my show this time. Don't steal my...
Or his voice.
Yeah, and obviously Ricky. Yeah, man, it's good to be here, man. It's good to be here.
Bless you, my man. Lovely to have you back alongside me. Before we bring in Mr. Cracknell himself, I'd like to have back alongside me for this one. He is Italian's very own Sport Italia's pundit. Simone Dell'Uomo is back. Simone, how are you, my man? You well?
I'm fine, guys. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Of course, every time you call me, guys, I'm here. Delighted to be alongside you, Crackers. But Ricky, delighted to be part of Spurs. Last Word of Spurs family, guys.
Listen, mate, it's a pleasure to have you here. And I've got to say, Simone is technically still working at the moment in the Italian market.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
giving you an indication of what's happening in the Italian market, Simone's here. So I'll let you make your mind about what's happening over the Italian transfer window. But listen, there's still business to be done. We've got Simone for a good half an hour or so. Back alongside us here. Look, this man's always busy during January. Can't get enough of him. It's only Richard Cracknell's in the house. Crackers, how are you, my man?
Evening, Rick. Evening, Patrick, Simone, and viewers, listeners. Nothing happening, but look, gives me an excuse to get into the man cave. Mrs. Cracknell's gone to bed, and I can sneak off to the fridge out in the garage, get a couple of beers. It's work. It's work juice. It's tea break time, isn't it?
Oh, mate,
so I don't care. Nothing's
get
happening.
away.
gives me an excuse for a beer, doesn't it?
Oh, mate, I tell you, look, we say what's happening. Listen, who knows what the next few hours will throw up in terms of, like I say, that situation around the Swedish lad that we've spoken about there, Lucas Bergvall. Again, I must make that point. That deal can be done, of course, outside of the January transfer window. But as a whole, you know what? I'll start with you, Simone. I mean, you tell us where you're at. I mean, the Italian market at the moment and the relation to the English market, been a very, very quiet month, Simone. What's it been like for you over in Italy in comparison to the English market?
Well, of course, guys, Ricky, the answer is quite simple about that because Italian football is very, very poor in terms of the economical side, in terms of being paragon to the English, to the NBA of football that is nowadays the Premier League. So nothing great about the deadline day in Italy. Andrea Belotti from Roma to Fiorentina. Gudmundsson, that is the other top players from Genoa. The other one, you got to know it because it's Rado Dagosin. Gudmundsson is staying at Genoa till the very end of the season because he decided to stay there and not to join Fiorentina, nothing more. Juventus decided at the very late to strike a deal for someone like Carlos Alcaraz that is coming from your championship to join one of our greats, one of our great side in Juventus. But nothing more, guys, nothing more. Italian football is not rich as it used to be, as many decades ago. So we need to enjoy, and as journalists, we need to write about that. But of course, we were expecting something great, but nothing about that.
It hasn't
Simone,
really.
Can I ask? Does Italy and the other leagues have to comply with FFP, or is that just a Premiership thing? It's a Premier League thing. It's not something I've really thought about until you was on. But does everybody have to dance to the same tune now with this FFP rules that we got in the Premier League?
Crackers, it's not about the FFP player rules. It's just about money. Money is everything, and in Italy we've got no money anymore, just like we used to have 20 years ago. If you remember, 20 years ago, Italian football was the best. Italian football was the Premier League of nowadays. So of course, today is all about opportunities. Then, of course, you know more than me that January transfer window is all about opportunities. Let's check around Europe about some deals that you can manage to do. But right now, for us in Italy, and even the main clubs are all about, let's check, let's have a look all around to see what's gonna happen. If you think about the fact that Juventus to strengthen their roster, and Juventus are back in terms of challenging for the Scudetto, for the title in Italy, they decided to strengthen their roster, their team, buying or managing a loan deal from someone that for you guys in England was playing for a championship side like Carlos Alcaraz, that last season scored an incredible goal after 2 minutes at the Emirates Stadium, but was currently playing for Southampton in championship. So it means a lot. It means a lot about the situation all around about Italian football.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, what I will just say again, guys, I know we're getting more and more viewers joining us all the time here. For listeners and audio, I feel bad. You've already heard this once before, guys. Paul O Keefe will be joining us very, very soon, as will Lee McQueen. It's the first time Lee is going to be upstaged by someone. He won't know what to do with himself, will he? What's Lee's reaction going to be? I tell you, Lee will be with us here very, very soon, as will Paul O Keefe.
Rick, the mystery surrounding Paul O Keefe and what he looks like, because like everybody's got an idea of what he looks like in their head. He's just this man that's got huge popularity, but nobody knows. It's going to be like the Masked Singer, isn't it? He should come on like with a great big mask on. Take it off. See who's underneath. I really hope he comes on like and he has actually got a mask on, so you never find out.
Rey Mysterio mask, another one underneath it, another one underneath it, another one underneath it.
Like Mexican lucha wrestling masks. He should come on with one of them on, shouldn't he? It'd be fabulous.
I should tip Paul off really on that. Go on, Pat, come in there for me, man.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say I just assume he looks like
Bill Nicholson.
Nicky, yeah, because that's the picture he's got up. So you just assume that's the kind of look and aura he's got about himself. So I'm just as excited as you lot to see what he actually looks like and to hear him talk as well. It's going to be interesting.
Can I just confirm, guys? He's a human. He's not a robot, right? I mean, I know Paul is probably watching this right now, probably pissing himself, thinking this is ridiculous. You know, this guy's got a family. He's just a normal guy. But listen, I say normal guy. Look, he's very well respected in the Spurs community, and we're blessed to have him join us very, very soon. Cracks, have you not seen Paul before? You not seen what he looks like? Is he mystery to you as well?
I've not met him, but I've seen his picture on WhatsApp, and we've exchanged some messages and had a few dealings with this and that in the past. So it's not a complete mystery. Honestly, he's a hunk. It's like Brad Pitt.
Oh, he is. Wait till he's selling that. He'll be delighted. He'll be with us soon. He will be with us soon. You know what? Let me go around to you, Pat, and just ask you about the window itself. A window in which has seen Spurs, of course, do more business than anybody else in terms of incomings. Of course, the two, Timo Werner and Rado Dragusin over the line fairly early in the month. Something we're not used to as Spurs fans. I mean, Pat, how has this window been so different to the previous ones? And is it a weird feeling going into deadline day? Maybe not with that apprehension and desperation that we need to sign players.
You know what? The whole window as a whole has been kind of underwhelming, not from a Spurs perspective, but just as a football fan. You know, you're used to seeing some big names come in. You're used to seeing some game changers, the last day franticness and people jetting across the country and trying to get these deals done, and even essentially deal sheets because, you know, they signed after the windows closed and they're trying to get, and there's been none of that this year. None. Like Brozier moving from Chelsea to Fulham or wherever he's going is kind of like one of the highlights of the day. It just shows how far this window has fallen off a cliff. But from a Spurs perspective, when you look at what we've done and what we did early, it's been brilliant. And I told you guys as well about Timo Werner. When everyone was talking about his goals, I said, this guy does get quite a few assists. Don't forget the assists. And I read out his assist stats. And lo and behold, in the Premier League, he's come in and he's created chances and he's got 2 assists. And, you know, a lot of people weren't sure about him. But I said I thought it was a good deal because he's better than Brian Gill. He's better than Valise. He's better than Dane Scarlett. And in my opinion, of course, he's a bit rusty and all of that. But he's been really good for us. He's direct. He takes his man on. And obviously, he's creating goal-scoring opportunities and people are tucking them away. So when you look at that, and we've added Dragusin as well, I'd probably say Spurs have probably come out the strongest out of all the teams in the Premier League. We've added 2 quality players, 2 players that we've needed. And even yesterday, we brought on Dragusin to see the game out. You just got a bit more depth now in all areas. And then when the guys do come back, like your Sonnies and, you know, your Sars and your Basumas, and even the Celso, if he ever comes back from his injury, which was so innocuous and whatever. But it just means that the squad is now quite buff and it's filled out and we've got options. And you can play Son down the middle. You can play Werner on the left. You could bring Richarlison in. You can just mix and match depending on how the game's going. Like yesterday, the game wasn't really, we had a lot of the ball in the first half, but we wasn't as direct and as, you know, as clinical as we needed to be. Big Ange made 2 changes and straight away we came out the traps and we looked a different team. When you've got depth and quality, you're able to do these things. And so from that perspective, we've had a very good window. Of course, you always want more. You know, we could have all wanted possibly another attacking midfielder in, or maybe like a ball playing midfielder in case Maddison, dare I say, does go down or gets injured or whatever. But all in all, when you look at what everyone else has done or hasn't done, I think it's been a good window. We haven't been frantic and, you know, at the edge of our seats on the day. We know kind of what we've done. The squad's settled. We've kept Brian Gill, which is good. You know, as much as he has been a bit disappointing, if he does leave and we don't bring someone in, it does make us weaker. So it doesn't make sense to do that if we're not going to bring another player in. Valise has gone out. And he's going to possibly get a lot of minutes over there. So that's good for us in the future. So all in all, no complaints really on my side, especially when you look at, like I said, what Premier League teams and teams in Europe have done. It's crazy. I think this PSR stuff has scared the life out of everyone. And no one's looking to do anything now because you got Everton and Nottingham Forest with impending charges, you know, hanging over them. And I think it's scared the life out of most of the clubs.
You know what, Cracks, bringing you in, isn't it strange? You know, you've been here with Arsenal Spurs for the last 6-7 years, and do you not find that normally what happens is that the January window seems to most certainly, I feel, take a massive part of how games end up playing out, because you feel like, oh, if we had this player, if we had that player, it ends up really, I feel, really sometimes messing up the results of games in January because everyone's fixated about bringing players in. I mean, how quite nice has it been, Cracks, that we've had the 2 guys in fairly early? They've settled in fairly well. You know, again, Dragusin, I'm sure, will be aged in gently. We'll talk about Everton a bit later on. But Werner, you know, he's already making an impact, as Pat said there. He's getting assists galore to begin with. I'm sure the goals will come as well very, very soon. But how pleasing is it, Cracks, that we're not here on the last day of January moaning and angry because the club haven't acted in the market so far?
Well, with this sort of last minute, last day business is fantastic if you actually get something done, like when we got Van der Vaart that time.
If it's someone you actually genuinely need and want.
Exactly. But when you miss out, it's terrible. And I mean, overall, there's almost like an excitement and a frisson, if you like, with Peter Odemwingie in 2013, wasn't it? Going from West Brom down to QPR, sat in the car park and actually speaking to Sky Sports News through his car window. And I mean, you know, Harry Redknapp as well, stopping and speaking to everybody and saying how difficult it is, and the chairman's doing his best. And I mean, there was something to that. So now things have quietened down. It's all, you kind of miss it a little bit, but don't miss it because we've been sensible and grown up. But Werner's come in early. If he was done today, because that's the way we was always doing business on the last day, you kind of think to yourself, well, he wouldn't have been there last night, and he would maybe not have got those assists, and we may not have got the win, which was 3 points. We may have only got a point from the game or even lost it. And at the end of the season, if we make Champions League by a couple of points, all of a sudden, Werner's paid for himself 50 times over. It's like mad butterfly wings in Venezuela or like tidal waves in Japan. Notions to that. I know. But you see what I'm saying? We got the business done early. Innie's come. Played very well yesterday. Dragusin as well. Fantastic signing because he can play fullback as well. He has played fullback, not just centre back. So a good window. But I miss it. I do miss it, Rick. I do miss that last day franticness. There's a theatre to it, isn't there? And football is entertainment at the end of the day. I know. It kind of goes beyond that a little bit, but let's see.
On the word of entertainment, right? We thought this evening wasn't going to be busy. I can tell you some breaking news coming through to us from David Ornstein. Because at the same time, O'Keefe is messaging me as well. The breaking news is Swedish talent Lucas Bergvall has chosen to join Tottenham Hotspur over Barcelona in a stunning coup for the Premier League side. The 17-year-old midfielder has emerged as one of Europe's most coveted prospects, and it appeared he would be signed for Barcelona. But Tottenham maintained a pursuit led by their Danish technical director, Johan Lange, and managed to convince Bergvall to opt for them, with a final decision made on Thursday night. We understand the agreement is in place with his club, worth a fixed fee of approaching around 10 million euros plus add-ons. It's expected that Bergvall will fly to London on Friday, which is his 18th birthday, to undergo a medical and put pen to paper on a 5-year contract. It is then planned and understood that he will stay at his parent club for the rest of the season before moving in the summer to Spurs and being part of the senior squad. We understand the player visited Hotspur Way on Monday, meeting key personnel, including Chairman Daniel Levy and head coach Ange Postecoglou, and he was pictured doing a similar thing on Barcelona on Tuesday. We understand that deal was almost done to Barcelona, only for Spurs to persuade Bergvall that his career should continue there, and they'll now aim to seal yet another impressive piece of recruitment. And I think, again, that is an impressive piece of recruitment. Many arguing the fact that, deadline day, nothing's going to happen. Well, look, Spurs have seemed to have got one over the line there that could be really, really exciting. Paul is joining us soon. We're going to lose Simone, unfortunately, at 10. So, Simone, I want to come over to you to get your reaction to this because, this is news that really will, I think, hit around Europe because Spurs, not only in a month where they've beaten Bayern Munich to the signing of a player, they've now gone and beaten Barcelona to the signing of what looks a real top teenage talent. Simone, what are your thoughts on that for you?
Yeah, it's a massive deal in terms of what Tottenham means to around the Europe, because it's not a secret that yesterday Bergvall was in Barcelona with his agent in order to discuss a deal with Barcelona, and then he decided to move to Tottenham, maybe because Tottenham decided to pave the way to his development in terms of a youngster. But of course, it's a massive deal. It's a massive deal, of course, in terms of future, but it means a lot around the Europe. It means a lot, and for me, it's a great news. It's a great news, and thank you, Ricky, to provide us that the kind of news that is gonna be absolutely exciting to every Spurs fan around the world.
Just get your thoughts on that, Pat. A guy that ultimately has got a really, really high ceiling of potential. Again, we can't get carried away that, look, he is a young player. And ultimately, this is a player that has had the opportunity to go and speak to Barcelona, come and speak to Spurs. And ideally and ultimately now, he's chosen Tottenham. I mean, how pleasing is that to hear, Pat, that a player of the future, what he's got in front of him, which looks really high, has chosen to join Tottenham Hotspur?
Yeah, I saw a report saying that he travelled to Hotspur away last Friday, and Kulusevski was having a good chat with him, explaining how good Tottenham is and that he should, put his future in our hands. And it just goes to show that you see Ange is probably going to be here for the long term, and people are respecting and loving what he's done and how quickly he's changed the mentality, the football, the feeling of the club. You're seeing that we're planning for the future in terms of the buys and players we're bringing in. And it just, it looks like we're an attractive proposition. And also as well that the manager is willing to guarantee that these guys will get game time. The same thing Dragusin. When Dragusin had his talk with Ange Postecoglou, he was guaranteed that he would get significant minutes for his development. And, even Maddison said the same thing when he had a chat with Ange Postecoglou in the summer. He was just like, with or without you, you're going to see we're going to be a completely different team. So Ange is definitely leaving his mark on players, and it's positive. I can't lie, I don't know much about the kid, but obviously we do know that his talent and ceiling must be really high if the likes of Barcelona after him, and it was a big coup. So yeah, long may it continue. We still got that Croatian defender to come in as well. I can't remember his name. The young
Luka Vuskovic.
That's it. So we're planning for the future. I do want to see a bit more talent for the now coming in the summer. It's all well and good having all these wonder kids, but sometimes wonder kids never come good. So we do need players for the now as well. But it's good to see succession planning. It's good to see us thinking ahead and, just being smart with what we're doing. So it's great news. It's great news.
It is great news. I mean, again, look, it's hard because the fact of the matter is, Crack's coming over to you on him. He's a very, very young player and a guy that has got the potential of a great future. But again, we've seen this before with Tottenham. We have signed players with unbelievable potential and they don't fulfill it. So the real key of the matter is, as we've said it before, Cracks, is how Spurs manage the player and ultimately give him those opportunities. Because again, we're talking about a young guy here that's going to, I think we've seen with Sarr and Destiny, really, that's really worked well, that system, hasn't it, in terms of allowing them to stay at their parent club and then bringing them over in the summer to get that full Postecoglou pre-season. Is that really important, just to allow the player to have that time, of course, to grow and ultimately being around the first team and along with the manager?
Yeah, absolutely it is. And we were talking about this on the show last night, of where young players do come in, step up. No matter how good they are, they make young people mistakes, don't they? Like we saw last night. So you don't kill them for it, do you? The only way to get experience is to get old and experienced, really. But this is exactly what we built that training centre for, wasn't it? He must have come along on Monday, seen everything going on there, seen how brilliant that is, seen what we're doing with our own youth system, top of the leagues, right through the ages. I mean, John Wenham will be your man for that. So you can see that there's a pedigree being built now at Spurs of developing and nurturing young talent. He would have seen Udogie and what's happened now, and Sarr coming through, and young players being brought in, being developed. So we seem a long way away, Rick and everybody, from the days of losing Dimitar Berbatov and getting a Fraser Campbell instead, don't we? It's it's absolutely light years away from that. And as you said, we've already beaten Bayern Munich to the signing of Dragusin, now Bergvall from Barcelona, and he's a kid. He's 17 years old. So you have to think of the things that feed into young minds. I've got two sons, one at 16, one at 19. So I know how kids of that age think and what they've been brought up with. This is like a FIFA generation. This may sound a bit mad, but these kids have been brought up playing FIFA. And you see teams like Barcelona on there. They're huge. They are absolutely huge to these kids. Now, all of a sudden, at 17, you're being courted by one of these teams you've grown up playing FIFA games with and seen Messi and seen with Barca. But then to come to Tottenham over that, with that in the back of your head of, I get a chance here to go and play and sign for Barcelona, but thinking about maybe his career path and his development more, it's huge. It is absolutely huge. I'm so pleased to see what we're doing, and it just everything seems to be some joined up thinking now. This is all we ever wanted from the club, wasn't it? To try and go and get these talents, to have everybody pulling in. How many times over the last 2-3 seasons everybody, Rick, needs to be pulling in the right direction? The players, the management team, the actual directors and people that run the club, the fans, everybody needs to be going in the right direction. And it feels like all those elements are now in place, and that's starting to happen. So it's fantastic news to bring him in. The only person I feel sorry for, Rick, is my dad. My poor dad. Yeah, I know he's gonna anglicise that. He'll be Bodgevals. I mean, if Bergvall was Bodgewins, he'll be Bodgevals. I'll get a phone call tomorrow. See, we got that Bodgevals kid in from Finland. I'll get a phone. That'll be the phone call. No, Daddy's from Sweden. Oh yeah, that's it. I knew it was somewhere up round there.
Let me come over to the man that probably knows how to pronounce the name. That's Simone Dell'Uomo, can I just say, the Italian expert here. Simone, look, we know we're losing you in the next 5 minutes. I can let you guys know, just for the comments, Paul O Keefe is in the waiting lounge. He's currently going through makeup right now, I can see. He's got Jonathan Ross there in the background, checking him over. Look at him, he's all right. Paul's laughing, by the way. I know you will see him in 5 minutes. Paul currently using all the mini bar we've got there in the background. I can see he's having a good time in the background. So Paul will be with us in 5. We'll try not to get him too drunk before he comes on air. Simone, I want to ask you, look, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure having you join us this month. What for you, Simone, do you feel is the ambition for Spurs over the course of the next 3-4 months? Is it for you now got to be Champions League football?
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be top 4. The main aim is all about top 4. And maybe it's going to be top 5 in terms of European DNA about the next Champions League, the next rules about Champions League. Then, of course, I really appreciated the way Daniel Levy, after 20 years, he decided to understand that maybe make early stages of a transfer window is going to be better than to see him at the very desperate late way to find a way to some struck deals. Now it's about finishing into the 4 to be back in the elite of European football again. I'd love Daniel Levy one day to rate the history of the club. So the FA Cup, Charity Shield, Carabao Cup, stuff like that, domestic cups, some silverware. It's almost about time to see Tottenham back again, to fight for titles. And when I say titles, I'm not, of course, just talking about Premier League, Champions League, but I strongly want to see a Spurs side really fighting for something like FA Cup or Carabao Cup.
Yeah. Simone, final one, mate. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on this window. We're going to try and get you back before the end of the season. Can I just remind everybody, this was the man that when Vicario signed and everyone was really throwing their toys out the pram, saying we got the cheap option and we should have got David Raya. Simone Dell'Uomo, can I just tell you, was the man that said, calm down, Vicario's going to be a star. And ever since that day in which Vicario we've seen over the course of the last few months has been a star, I have been absolutely hounded saying, bring Simone back. We need to have this man back on here. And we had the pleasure of bringing Simone back a couple of times. And mate, it's lovely that you joined us on deadline day. Again, I re-emphasise the point. You're working. It's a busy day still out in Italy, mate. So we can't thank you enough. Simone, where can everybody find the work you do over in Italy? Please enlighten those viewers and listeners.
Guys, on my mail, on my Instagram, on my channels. So thank you really, Ricky, for everything. So always a pleasure to be back with you, with Pat, with Crack, for the last one of Spurs family. So of course you know the love that.
That's a new one.
I'm not a fan of any Italian football club, but of course for Tottenham, here I am. So thank you guys. Really appreciate it a lot. Thank you,
Simone. The pleasure is mine, man.
I'll take being called Crack because where I live, Crack is.
Sorry, mate. I just tried to.
No, not at all. See, I live out in Spain. Crack is a great footballer. There's a baller. Crack, I'll take that. The crack of last word on Spurs. Crack. Muchas gracias, Simone.
No,
Sorry,
I won't tell you what I want
Sorry.
to. I won't tell you what I want to say. This is meant to be a
Absolutely.
family show, so I got to keep together what I say. That was superb.
Love you all, guys. Love you all.
Simone,
Thank you.
my man,
It's a
we
lot,
wish
mate.
you all the best. We really, really do, mate. Listen, the one Simone Dell'Uomo there, like I say, there from Sport Italia. Simone, we wish you all the best, my man. Right, Paul is joining us in the next minute or so. And like I say again, I'll re-emphasise that point. Spurs, for those that are just joining us right now, Tottenham Hotspur have beaten Barcelona to the signing of Lucas Bergvall in a deal which sees Tottenham have the player join them in the summer. It's a sign that I think for many, I think in England, that will send real shockwaves because he's a young kid that's been very much high on the agenda of many top European clubs. And we're getting Paul on in a second just to get his view on just how big a deal that is for Tottenham. Because again, whilst it's a young talent, it's a player that has been very well known across the market and has been really in high demand, as we know, with the fact, of course, there's been interest there from the likes of Barcelona. He went to see them. He's went to see Spurs. And ultimately, Spurs are the club for him. Right. It is now time. I feel
It's like the Graham Norton show, Rick, isn't it? Honestly.
I just feel bad. I just feel bad because I'm going to say Paul has not had the Graham Norton experience in terms of the back room, in terms of what he would have, should have got. But look, it gives me my pleasure to welcome a man that, can I just say, is revered across Spurs social media. He's a man that is, of course, well known for breaking some really, really big deals. Team news, of course, as well. But first and foremost, a really great guy that I've had the pleasure to know over the last 3-4 years. And I've got to say as well with Paul, has helped bring many journalists onto Last Word on Spurs. So it does give me my pleasure to welcome Paul O Keefe onto the stage.
How are we doing, Ricky?
Paul, my man, how are you? You well?
I'm good, man. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Would you was laughing, Paul? I said to you, it's going to be dead. It was going to be dead, wasn't it? What's happened?
I know, and now my phone's going bananas because obviously that deal has just come to light from Orney's tweet. He's let it go. So, yeah fantastic news. Brilliant window for Tottenham. Really good.
You know what, Paul? First thing I just say, I'm sure Pat and Cracks want to extend the fact that they're lovely to have you. Obviously, you join us here, and ultimately, mate, you absolutely love the cross Spurs fandom at the moment because it has been a decent time for Tottenham in terms of the market. And again, I'll make the point that I'm sure Paul want to claim he's not Bill Nicholson.
No.
Or are you, Paul? Can we get do you have the trophies?
Few grey hairs on the side, but coming along nicely. Give it
you can see he's had the full Tottenham experience, right?
Paul, I've followed Spurs longer than you. Look at that. Look at the colour of that. That's 1975 following Spurs hair. Jet white.
I'll eventually morph into Bill and Crackers.
Oh, well, get some trophies alongside it. Paul will be all right. Tell me more, Paul, about this deal, what you think about it. Because, again, this is a guy that, you would have had obviously a bit of intel on in terms of Spurs being interested. How big a deal is this to bring this Swedish talent to the club? We obviously know he's going to stay at his parent club and then come in the summer. But in the grand scheme of things, how excited should we be about the deal, Paul, in your eyes?
Yeah, very much so. Spurs have been playing it down big time, saying they weren't confident. The boy come over in the week to have a look around the facilities, meet Daniel Levy, meet Ange, meet the rest of the people involved in the transfer business, Johan Lange, and they weren't. They were pushing out that they weren't overly confident for this. Certainly, never going to happen in this window. That was a guarantee. But yeah, they were playing it pretty low key to be fair. So it's a little bit of a surprise. Wasn't sure they were going to get a decision today, so it's great that they managed to tie that up. But yeah, apparently a fantastic talent. I can't claim to be an expert on the lad because his name just popped up sort of, a couple of weeks ago. But it's just it's a signal of how Spurs intend to work now in the market because they're looking at completely different avenues. And previously they got sort of attracted to these big star names, big fees, and then they go in under the price and they can't get them over the line, and then people get frustrated because it's sort of a delusions of grandeur, aiming for the stars and then ending up with someone who was 7th on the list. So this whole setup at Tottenham now is a lot slicker. They have these data boys that put forward proposals. They're then shortlisted. Recruitment take a good look at them. They do the scouting on them, and then finally they'll sit down with Ange. They'll put forward the proposals, and he'll make a decision as to who they want to pursue the most.
You know what, Paul? It's been a window which I think for many of us here have been really unused to. I asked Kraz and obviously Pat their thoughts about the fact that normally going into a deadline day, there's always that feeling of desperation around Spurs that we haven't done enough. I mean, how do you feel, Paul? I mean, I feel whenever I read what you've said over the last 3-4 years, I mean, you just seem to have a really common sense take on things. I know there's been times where we've both been really disappointed that we haven't done enough. I mean, how do you feel overall this window has been now on the back, of course, of signing a deal which obviously sees Spurs not once but twice, beat a European heavyweight to a player? Of course, the likes of Bayern Munich with that deal for Dragusin and now for the young lad in Lucas Bergvall. How big a window has it been for you in terms of success, or is that difficult to say right at this second?
No, they had their aims at the beginning of the window, and that, well, not in the beginning of the window. In the last 6 months, the idea has been that ever since Ange come in, a centre-back would arrive in January. And they got that deal done. And they wanted another attacking option. They didn't necessarily want another centre-forward. They wanted a player that could offer them attack on either flank plus through the middle. And they've got that done as well. Obviously, that's just a loan, but that's the way football's going now. Football is doing this try now, buy later, because there's just no money around. There's no money in Europe. There's very little money. If you look at the Premier League spend in this particular window, it's fallen through the floor. There's just no money in football. Wages have got out of control over the last sort of 5 to 10 years. And then, of course, COVID struck. That really frightened a lot of clubs. And then clubs overspent. And now, of course, you've got the FFP, which is really beginning to bite because they've tightened that up significantly. And there's so many issues with clubs overspending. And now you've got to look at different avenues. You've got to look at players that can progress in the next 2-3 years. And from the lesser clubs, the lesser teams, you've got to really expand your network. And that's what Tottenham have done really well, because they now have a scouting and data network, which is completely worldwide. And they study literally hundreds and hundreds of players, and they see who's outperforming the stats for that particular region. And then they compare it to, say, the English Premier League or the lower ends of the English football pyramid. And that's how they're working now. And that's how you can save money. It's smart recruitment. It's clever recruitment. And a lot of these clubs now are having to look at loaning to sample it and then have to pay a fee later on. And they are kicking the can down the road to a certain extent, but it's the way football is moving. There's just a serious lack of funds in football. The bubble hasn't burst. It won't ever burst because it's such a massive multi-billion industry, but it's certainly got a puncher.
Do you know what? Again, I'll bring Pat and Cracks in here. I mean, Cracks, have you got any questions there for Paul? Because again, I mentioned that fact, a window which has offered so many questions up. I'll pass over to you, Cracks. We'll go then, Pat.
Paul, I had a message earlier for Peter Kisfaludi, I think he's the youth team director where Bergvall currently is, said there was a couple of big hitters, English clubs, along with Spurs, that came in the last couple of days and tried to tempt him as well. Do you know that might have been, or?
It's not something I've heard, to be honest. The only competition that I was aware of was Barcelona, and that was very well progressed, apparently, until Tottenham decided to enter the fray properly. So, yeah, it's not something I can shed light on, unfortunately. These sort of stories always appear, don't they, once a deal was done. Oh, he was going to go to Chelsea, he was going to go to United. Yeah, well. Agents love feeding that line out after a deal's done.
It is huge. It is absolutely. Even if the lad doesn't kick on, progress, come to a row of beans. I mean, he is only 17. Like I always say to you, Rick, I've got shoes older than that. I've actually got lots of pairs of shoes older than 17. But the fact remains that we've actually pipped a club in Barcelona and also pipping Bayern Munich as well to 2 signings. I think tells you so much about what seems to now be going on around the club and what sort of what they're offering as a club and a career progression to young players. It's fantastic. As I say, he might not kick on. He's 17.
Yeah,
there's been a lot of kids come through at 17 and just fall by the wayside. But the fact remains that we've gone toe to toe with a couple of big heavyweights in Europe and actually tempted players away. Now, whether that's money orientated or whether that's career progression orientated, I don't know. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is that they are actually Spurs players. So it's fantastic news.
I couldn't put it better, Cracks. I mean, that's the thing. And I'll open up to Pat here. I'm sure Pat's got a few questions for Paul as well, because again, when you consider the state that was impact when you actually joined the show, six months ago, 7 months ago. And I just think of that Newcastle game away to 6-1 and just how far this club has come to. If you would have said to me, Pat, me and you would be here 7-8 months later, we'd be discussing in January windows, sitting here beating Barcelona on 5 minutes of silence. I would have laughed at you. So, Pat, I'll open up to you. I'm sure you've got a few questions you want to ask Paul as well.
Yeah, Paul, how you doing, man? Lovely to be
good,
on. Thank
you.
Yeah, good to finally meet you. Obviously, we follow each other on Twitter and we've exchanged tweets and stuff now and again, but it's good to be in your presence and company. But I just wanted to ask you, this Lucas I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Lucas Bergvall kid, what type of profile of player is he, and who would you say was instrumental in getting him across the line at Spurs?
I mean, as I say, I've not really looked into the lad very much, to be quite honest with you. As for instrumental, I think Tottenham is such a glamorous project if you're a young player. If you get to visit the facilities, and if you get to see what they're doing, and if you get to meet Ange, who's obviously very charismatic and really sells the sort of project. And if you look at it from a young player's point of view, that Spurs, without being disrespectful to Tottenham, are sort of just below the top echelons, if you like, of the elite clubs. So you can go there, you can become a superstar, and that eventually could lead to you becoming, getting a massive move and all that. I think Tottenham have to accept that place in the pecking order. Whereas if you go to Barcelona, you can become another one in the youth ranks, another kid that just falls by the wayside, and people go, "Oh, do you remember him 5 years ago? He was supposed to be the next big thing," and all the rest of it. So I think Tottenham is really attractive. I think people can't underestimate how big the pull of being in the Premier League, and London in particular, is huge. And it's a place where people, now as a young player will want to go there, because they'll see the squad. They're reducing the age of the squad. If you look at it, they're bringing in young players. They're giving opportunities to young players. The likes of Destiny now, who's absolutely flourishing, Mickey van der Ven. So, it's more attractive, and now they're not. They've been a car crash for many years, especially administrative wise. But now they actually look like they have solid foundations and a solid plan going forward. And it's took a long time. It's took Daniel over 20 years to get to where we are. And the next stage for Spurs is winning trophies. I mean, that's the next step. They've got all the infrastructure, they've got the money, they've got the fan base, they've got the stadium, they've got the training facilities. So the next stage for Tottenham is to really kick on and start to deliver and win things.
You know what, Paul, on that point, we've been here, again, you followed the club for longer than me. You've seen many false dawns. I just wonder, you mentioned that Daniel being here for 20 years. Do you feel that in the direction we're going now, is this the most positive you've seen it? Or, again, Maurizio's tenure at times looked like it was in a fairly positive direction. Is it hard to compare the two so early into Ange's reign at the moment?
To me, it just feels a lot calmer. The whole club seems to be a lot more calmer. There seems to be less politics.
Right.
They found a manager in Ange who is not going to sit there and insist, you get this player, I want this player.
Right.
I want you to go and spend £60 million on this player. And if you don't get it, my toy's going out the pram. Ange isn't like that. Ange is prepared to work with people, to listen to others' ideas, to take their thoughts on board, and that's what Daniel Levy's needed all along. He's needed a manager that isn't going to be saying to him and demanding this. At the same time, he's not going to just sit back and go, well, you give me anything, I'm not bothered. But there seems to be just this understanding, which is a lot smoother than the likes of Jose, obviously, and the likes of Conte, and even Pochettino. I mean, Pochettino was very demanding, Maurizio, and he had his way, and that was it. That was there was no sort of compromise. Whereas Ange, we've seen with his coaching staff, he's prepared to bring in new people at every club he's ever been to, and he's prepared to listen to new ideas, and he's prepared to, take a different approach. And I think it's refreshing. And I think Daniel Levy doesn't feel as under pressure in that sense. Whereas if he's got a massive name manager, he's under pressure to deliver constantly. And at the moment, everything seems to be working in sync. They seem to be very relaxed. They were very relaxed about the extra signings, that once they got their 2 in, and they got them in early, which again is a new dawn for Tottenham. We're normally here on deadline day looking for any old tenuous link to.
Well, I'll tell you what, Paul. If it was like, can I say, Paul, was it ever deadline day, you would not be here.
Yeah, yeah. It's been.
I could tell you for a fact, Paul would not be here if it was any other deadline day. Let me tell you.
Yeah, it's very relaxed. We're normally splitting feathers at this point of the evening, aren't we?
You'd be on the phone, Paul, at this time, going, "What's happened here? What do you mean they've lost him?"
Yeah, they've been really relaxed throughout the transfer window. They have their set ideas. They know what they want to do. Yeah, they know who they want to get rid of. They know who they want to bring in. The summer, again, they've got some really good foundations now. If you look at what they've done, they've got their centre-back. They'll get another centre-back in the summer. That's the plan. They'll look at centre midfield because obviously they expect Pierre to leave. And then they'll look at the attacking options. Whether that's a centre forward, I'm not fully convinced because fair play to Richarlison, he's really turned it around at Tottenham. I'm not a massive fan of his because I think technically he lacks a little bit, but you cannot deny the guy has been delivering recently. And I thought last night he was really impressive last night. Yeah. I think he's shown in the recent games a maturity that wasn't there previously. The way he's leading the line now. And that must be a confidence thing, obviously, when he was out of the team and having problems with injuries. So he seems to have got his confidence. I think that's probably made Tottenham think twice about his situation as well now. But yeah, in the summer they're not short now. They're not far away from a complete squad. There may be 4 or 5 players you could add, 4 or 5 you could move on, and you'd say, yeah, on paper that's a really strong squad.
I totally agree on that point. I really, really do. And you know what, Cracks, I'll just bring you back in there because when Paul mentions about the structure, I think it's fair to say that, on this show, and I know many of that argument that they don't feel critical enough of the board. I mean, I have felt that in the last 5, 6, 7 years, I think we say what needs to be said in the most respectful and the most polite way of doing that. Because I feel, again, like, if you're going to be shouting and swearing and screaming, I think your point ends up getting lost. And, ultimately, I just wonder, Cracks, do you feel as a fan now that it just feels, as Paul said there's a bit more of a calmness about the place where even as fans now, everything feels like it's going in the right direction?
Yeah, and that's all we've ever wanted, isn't it? And, over the past 2-3 seasons, as you know, I went and spoke to a lot of the guys that were part of the ENIC Out protests and went down there and spoke with them to understand where they were coming from, the things that they were looking for. But we always said on this show that we wanted either ENIC to go if they wasn't change or to change. Now, I mean, it's all very well asking for these people to go, but who's got 7-8 billion pounds down the back of the sofa to buy us out? Because you're not just buying a football club anymore. You're buying an absolute behemoth of a business. There's the concerts going on. There's the F1 track, and a lot of people go, oh well, I'm not interested in all that. But you have to be raising money and making money and having NFL and having Beyonce on ice and monster trucks and anything else that they want to put in to bring the money in to the club to be able to buy these players. So look, it now looks like that where we asked the club to start just putting some focus into the football team, they are. And the whole things just seems to be coming together really well in that part of the club is now running the entertainment side, if you like, and the peripherals that are going on, and that is feeding in to the actual football side. One thing that's really helped them, you just cannot underestimate just how important finding Ange and bringing Ange into this club has been. It has been absolutely huge. It's silenced all the doubters. He's the face of Tottenham Hotspur now, the football club side of things. He's an unbelievable communicator. He just must be a dream, because he just takes everything that comes at the football club and deals with it, you know. And Daniel and everybody above him now have him there almost like a bodyguard, and he just deals with everything. He deals with everything that was coming their way. He just heads it off at the pass now. So it's odd, because there seems to have been a real sea change at Tottenham ever since Joe Lewis put the club into a trust, out of his sort of personal ownership and into a family trust. Not ever since he's had his other dealings that he's had to deal with in the States, but ever since the club went into a trust ownership, out of a family trust and out of his sort of personal ownership, there seems to have been a real change. So I'm just wondering, I don't know if Paul has any insight on this. I don't know if anybody does, because they seem, you know, almost more secretive than the royal family, the Enoch family, whether there's been, Daniel's had a little bit more autonomy to be able to make some different decisions in the club direction since it sort of came out of Joe's ownership and into that trust. But ever since then, just everything seems to have fallen into place and be going the right way.
What do you reckon, Paul? You got an opinion on that?
No, I'm not sure about. I don't know the family situation. I know that the daughter runs all of the Enoch accounts, Enoch companies. There's something like 200 odd that they own, and she's not particularly, or anyone's particularly involved in Tottenham. Tottenham is Daniel's baby, always has been. But I think he himself, with the management team, he set up with Scott and Johan and the data boys who transformed the club, to be fair, because a lot of the stuff that went through the transfer market has come from their leads. You know, it's not all been Paratici with his little black book and his 5 mobile phones. So it's Daniel's. I think that he himself is sort of feels more confident in the people around him now, more so than he's prepared to. And if you've got these data guys that are unearthing gems that are under 20 million quid, then obviously his ears are going to prick up anyway, because that's his market. That's where he wants to be aiming. That's where he wants to be shopping. Your 50, 60 million pound players that were bought for sort of Conte and Pochettino to sort of pacify them. That isn't going to happen anymore. You know, the football bubble, as I said earlier, with the transfers and the fees that are involved nowadays, clubs are looking at much more ingenious ways of getting players through the door. Young talent. Fans like to see young talent. They like to see someone that's got potential. Yeah. I saw early in the week £50 million for Dominic Solanke. I mean, where's the world going? 50 million quid. The guys have one decent season in the Premier League. You know, I mean, I don't want to disrespect the lad, but he's 26, 26. I believe 26. He's a journeyman. Next season, he probably get 5 goals. You know, and that's not where Tottenham need to be shopping. You know, in my opinion, they need to be looking at the younger players that are coming hungry, that want to play for Tottenham. That's a big thing as well. Whereas if you do buy these superstars, they think they're better than you and all the rest of it. And I don't think that works. It just doesn't work at Tottenham. It may work at Chelsea. Well, it's not working at Chelsea, but it may work at other clubs.
Well,
but is
it definitely not working at Chelsea? Seems like he's doing a good job over there at the moment, Paul, did he?
I read today. I was reading today, and then I worked out the maths on it. Chelsea asked for a £5 million loan fee on that Broja.
Yeah.
If you work that out, there's 4.5 months of the season remaining. That's £300,000 a week plus his wages. Now, it's lunacy, utter lunacy. Why on earth would anyone pay £300-something thousand a week for Broja to have him for 4.5 months? Not even your player. I mean, football, honestly, it just amazes me sometimes that people they're not thinking straight.
I have got to ask you, Paul, about where we find ourselves in terms of the PSR and just how that is impacting the market. Before I do, Pat, I want to bring you in from what Paul sent us there, just in terms of the fact that there just seems to be that structure in place. Do you feel that as well, Pat? I've even seen with you recently, there's a lot more of a calmness with you, Pat, that, we've all wanted instant success. We've all wanted the desperation for trophies. But I feel even with you, Pat, bless you, I mean it in the best possible way. I feel like we can all see now we're part of a journey. We're part of a long-term project where we can all see it's not just about one result. It is about following a certain brand, a certain style, and ultimately sticking to that. That's the one thing since Andrew's been here. He's not revered from that. He's been very much on the case that, we're not going to change for anybody. And whilst he says that, we did see Dragoshin come on the other night and go into a back three, which again shows you Ange can be flexible when needs be, but we're not going to ram it down your throat that we want to change. So, Pat, how do you feel about things at the moment? Because I'm worried that things are going incredibly calm at the moment.
Yeah, it's a good thing, isn't it, that things are a lot calmer and smoother now. And obviously, we crashed out in the cup against Fulham. We were all a bit pissed. That was early on in the season, but we crashed out in the FA Cup against Man City, and of course we were upset. But you saw I didn't go crazy. I didn't overdo it. A lot of people did go crazy on Twitter and social media, but you have to put into context. It's Manchester City first and foremost. Secondly, it's just unlucky in terms of the pot draw. But yeah, Ange has a plan. He has a philosophy. He sticks to that system. You live by the sword and you die by the sword. But I mean that in the respect of that you can see what he's trying to do. It's not always going to work. There will be mistakes. It's his first season. He's learning on the job as well. The same way we all can appreciate how good Udogie is. But yesterday he made a silly mistake because he's young. It's his first season here. I mean, even the best players make mistakes at certain times. And to be fair to him, Mickey van de Ven did actually point back to pass the ball. So neither Mickey nor saw Thingy hanging around. And the crazy thing is, a striker is typically never 20 yards, 30 yards offside, but Tony was, and it was smart on his behalf, and he obviously gobbled up the chance. But I'm going back to the point of everyone's learning on the job. This is his first season. So we started really brightly, and I think some fans did taper their expectations and went a bit crazy. And obviously the media then started to build on that, to build us up and build us up and build us up to essentially knock us down when all the injuries happened. But we can see there's a plan. We can see there's like a clear strategy and structure. And as long as things stay how they are, then it's brilliant. Obviously, you will get these moments where, for example, a Klopp just decides to leave and it's announced and they try and link Ange to that job, or say at the end of the summer, Guardiola decides to pack it up because he's been there a while. They will unfortunately link Ange to Man City. It's going to happen, isn't it? But we just need to stay strong.
Oh, Rick, stop it, Pat. Look at the man win.
You can see already that they're going to do that, man, because they love to do that to Tottenham. But we just need to stay strong as fans, and obviously Levy needs to now back. We've put all these things in play in terms of the like Cracker said, the stadium, the this, the that. It's now time to invest in the football side of things. And if we continue to do that, then I do think the rants and the fans going crazy will stop. Some people do thrive off negativity. So when we do have a wobble, you'll see them come out. But I think most fans will understand that even if we do have a bit of a wobble, if they can see there's a structure and a plan, they'll kind of relax a bit, because ultimately, it's a marathon and not a sprint, and there will be bumps in the road regardless of who you are. So I think that's been my kind of mantra, Ricky. So that's why I've chilled out a bit this year.
Well, because I was chilled out, Pat, until you brought up what I didn't want you to bring up. And now Paul's here. I'm like, Paul's looking at me saying, don't you dare.
Those of us, Ricky, that are a million years old and remember the Pink Panther films of Peter Sellers and Herbert Lom. Herbert Lom, whenever Inspector Clouseau was mentioned, his eye used to flicker like this.
Oh,
and every time Ange and Liverpool's mentioned, you remind me of Herbert Lom in in the Pink Panther films where his eye just starts to go and he's like he gets his nervous twitch. I could see you wincing then.
You know
Rick.
what?
Relax, he's going no, he won't
I
go
hope
up
not.
there.
I mean, Paul, the thing of the matter is, I'm not going to. It's an impossible question to answer, Paul, because we're not Ange, right? But the one thing I do feel is that he seems really happy here. And I think he's in the start of a project like you mentioned there that ultimately there seems like a clear alignment that, he's always wanted to get to the Premier League. He's at the Premier League now. Tottenham have given him that opportunity. Do you sense, again, from what we hear from a lot of, the top tier journalists out there, like obviously Ali Gold, that, he is here because he is happy with what's happening at the moment. He wants to repay that loyalty. Do you think, again, with that point, that he want to be here long term, whatever long term is, to oversee what is this rebuild that he says in every club he goes into, and he thrives on that point of building teams and ultimately achieving that success?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately he got a 4.5-year deal, didn't he? So,
yes, that's right. Yeah.
He's bought into what Tottenham have sold him, the project. So, and he's only 6 months into it. Talk of him leaving now is just utterly ridiculous. Football is about timing, and if the Liverpool job come along in 2-3 years' time, and he had a year and a half left on his deal, then you could talk about it. But there's absolutely no chance he leaves Tottenham for Liverpool. Zero.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. I mean, listen, again, I just want to touch on a thing you said there, Paul, about the young players, because there was one that was linked only, a week or so ago in relation to Antonio Nusa, a player that, again, similar to what we've heard about, Bergvall, a player that's been highly scouted in and around Europe. Now, again, what's been interesting about the guy is that it's not a lack of talent, but unfortunately he's had some medical issues there that we can't obviously divulge in this show because we shouldn't be talking about, obviously, medical issues that we don't know enough about. But what was your feeling at the time, Paul, when it appeared Brentford stole a march on Tottenham for the player, a player that it appeared Spurs had tentative talks with, and you had said, I think you agreed on, put out the point there, that Spurs only had one meeting in relation to the player himself?
To clarify that, they had one club-to-club meeting with Bruges. So what happens with this lad in particular is that his agents were touting him to various clubs, and they were putting in bids on behalf of clubs. So a lot of the talk about Tottenham's interest, they did look at the guy, they did speak to them, and they did explore the deal, but it was never that far progressed, as far as what I could gather. They did have a club-to-club meeting to understand the parameters of any deal that would need to be done. So they got the fee. I don't think they were overly impressed by the fee. I think Tottenham saw him at a lot less money, and they sort of backed off a little bit because they wanted something like 33 million euros, which Tottenham weren't prepared to go to that. I think if they could have got him for 15 million euro or something like that, they'd have done the deal immediately. But they didn't see the value in that, from what I understand. So they had a club-to-club meeting. They understood the parameters of the deal. Then the agents were pushing him, saying Chelsea have bid and XYZ have bid, and Brentford came in, and then Brentford obviously got the lad over for a medical. They had a couple of things that flagged up that they weren't quite happy about. So they've then gone back to Bruges, and I believe that the idea now is that he'll sign for them in the summer.
Right.
Paul, can I ask a question, Rick? Sorry. Paul, if a club like Bruges, if they know that he has this medical issue that's being reported, we don't know for sure that he does, and then try to sell him, do you have any comeback, almost as if you're going into a shop that's selling you a DVD player, I'm showing my age now, and the shop knows it's defective, but still sells you it? Does that sort of, those laws of buying and selling that you would in just walking into a shop, does that apply to football as well? So if Bruges were aware of that, or is it import caveat, let the buyer beware with it?
Well, Bruges were aware, and Bruges are their argument, as far as what I can gather, is that it's insignificant, and it shouldn't have been something that would flag up to be a major issue. But I mean, in any contract, especially if you're dealing with 30-40 million euros, you'd have the deal subject to medical. So there should have been a clause in there that said that, it's on the proviso that the boy passes a medical, and you then get international clearance and all that sort of stuff. So that there should be caveats in that, particularly when you're dealing with 30 million euros. So, but from what I understand, the national doctor as well has sent a report. The club had sent reports, and Brentford disputed it. So I'm not fully au fait with exactly every detail on the deal, but there's some dispute, and whether Brentford saw that as an opportunity to renegotiate, which is generally how it goes. You normally, if you flag something on a medical, you normally renegotiate player terms and with the club to see if you can get something done. But as far as I'm aware, Bruges didn't believe that it was going to be a significant problem.
It's interesting because, again, you make the point there, Paul, that, the fee with regards to the player is one that, again, you're looking at a young player with the word potential. And again, look, the one that Spurs have got here for Bergvall, again, we're going to the point of potential. Just some of the, kind of say, Paul, there's absolute love that's coming in from it. There's about 3,500, 4,000 watching this live.
I would imagine so many people are bitterly disappointed that they didn't see some 25-year-old hunk, and they've seen a 51-year-old man who's greying hair and got a scraggly neck.
I know you missed it because you was in the green room at the time being pampered, but Cracks did say as an absolute hunking Brad Pitt joined us. I know many have not been let down, Paul, so make sure those DMs are closed because that's going to go absolutely mental in the next couple of hours, just to let you know. It might be a completely different deadline day. You might just put on your own phone. But quite literally, I think, again, the amount of love that's pouring through.
I'm reading some of the mentions, and it's funny.
I think what I should say to you, Paul, beforehand is we should have done like a reveal. We should have got you loads and loads of Rey Mysterio masks to keep putting them off and putting them off and putting them off.
Yeah, I should have just leant into the camera and gone, "Hello, mate."
Oh, you know what? That was the one. Why did we do it? Right as the signing came in. You know what? What I want to ask you, Paul, is that it has been an interesting window, given the fact that the lack of signings and the lack of activity. I mean, with relation to those clubs and where Spurs are at the moment, and again, this is not to make it a Levy loving, but how would you equate Spurs' position to those other clubs above them at the moment with regards to what they can and can't do? And how much credit do you feel does need to go to the hierarchy? Because look, I think we've all given them a fair battering in their time for not being ambitious, not spending when they shouldn't have spent. You give me your thoughts on it, Paul. Deserved.
They deserved us. They deserved a kick in. Particularly, I think my problem with ENIC ownership isn't necessarily on the pitch now. It's the way that they've dealt with matters off the pitch, particularly the way they exploited fans with ticket pricing, and they've really profiteered, I believe, out of the supporters, because they have got this fan base that are super dedicated, that are, there's an abundance. It's the supply and demand thing. Because they have the demand, they take the piss, and that doesn't sit well with me. I don't fund ENIC personally. I don't believe in that side of it. The way that they run the club. I think that's the biggest issue with ENIC. Their on-field mismanagement has been clear for everyone for many years. They've wasted so many opportunities. They've wasted so much money, their own money, which when you consider how frugal they are, you think, the likes of Ndombele at 60 million pounds and giving him a contract worth another 60 million, which was just bonkers. But anyway, so they've learnt their lesson there. But my biggest gripe with ENIC is not necessarily to do with the footballing side. Now, I think they've got that right, finally, 20 years later. My gripe is the way that they have treated the fans over the years, particularly with, like I say, with the tickets, with the removal of the concessions and things like that. It's just unnecessary, in my opinion.
Do you feel, Paul, before I bring Pat in there, do you feel, given where we are now, and we all feel that Ange is the right manager, and you've spoken glowingly of the structure they've now got at the football club with that recruitment team, with those data experts, do you feel that it's too late for ENIC to win back fans? Or do you feel, again, with football, it is very much based on results? And we've seen this season, really, that I think Crack said it, with Ange being there, his presence and his character alone is so likeable that noise towards ENIC, I'm not saying it's completely drowned out, because again, for the fear of being hammered by, again, those ENIC out people were there. And can I just say again, for us here as a podcast, We don't really have a position on it. Last one of Spurs doesn't have a vehicle. Last one of Spurs is a vehicle. There's no such thing as in or out. I think what we've all said is that we're here to support the football club in the best way possible. And all I care about is the achievement of what Spurs do. I don't really care who's in charge. Provided they're backing the manager, I'm happy. And I've got no problem at all calling out the club when they're not backing the manager. But I have to feel that this window compared to the last however many years, it's the first time actually I believe I'm coming out of a window where I actually feel, okay, it's all right. We're not in need of 3-4 players. But again, had we been in the Champions League, had we been in the cup competitions, my answer might be different. But going into the last 16 games of where we are, I do feel we've got enough now squad-wise to get ourselves through to the summer. But I think the key again is the fact that it can't be one window, Paul, can it? They've got to have that plan for the next window and the next window and not let it just be the one. How critical is that, Paul, before I bring Pat in?
Yeah, and they're doing that. I think everyone can be relaxed with regards to how the recruitment works now and how in sync those departments are. Whereas previously we weren't in sync. We had different thoughts. We had different people pulling in different directions. We had Daniel doing his thing. We had Paratici doing his thing. We had the manager wanting this and different. There was no unison. So my concern with Spurs isn't necessarily on the pitch. It's always been. I think you can differentiate the two as well. I think you can be critical of ENIC for the management of the club, and you can still be positive about the future and positive about the team that we're assembling and about the management team with the football inside. Because before you had people who didn't know nothing about football managing the football side, and now you have people from the actual industry with years of experience and all the data to back it up, who are advising the hierarchy. And what they're doing is they're doing it in a manner which is much more appealing to the hierarchy, because they're looking at players that aren't in that 50, 60, 70 million pound bracket. And of course, that ticks a lot of boxes. So you've got a happy medium there. So, I think you can be confident with what's going on off the pitch in terms of recruitment and in terms of the way that they see the club progressing.
Pat, it's so refreshing, isn't it, right, to hear this? I mean, again, we all are, here to support the football club, and we're here to also, again, have an opinion on the fact of the way the club is run. And, again, Paul says here, look, we're 20 years later, but it feels things are going in place. How important is that for you, Pat, to see that it isn't just the one window, like I mentioned to Paul there? It's got to be that continuous cycle, and Paul seems to feel that will be the case, that in the summer they will have those targets. They'll hopefully move for those targets. Is that, Pat, where you'll maybe have that opinion that things are maybe really starting to change long term, that it's not just a one-off this window? What do you need to see, Pat, that's going to convince you that the board is still the right they are still the right hierarchy in place for the long term?
I will come back to this question, Vicky, but I wanted to also ask Paul. It kind of relates to what you just asked, but like our under-21s, our PL2 team, they're doing really well. They've won 11 out of 11. They're flying, the top of the league. Is there a plan? Because we're talking about the future, and is there a plan for some of these kids to be integrated into the first team? And do you think any of them will actually make it through? It's been a while since we've seen an academy kid.
It's hard.
Andy Kane, or even Oliver Skip, even though, some people, he's not their biggest, we're not his biggest fan, etc. But he's a regular mainstay in the first team. Is there any kids that you can see from the PL2 team who are smashing their league that you think can make it and become, first team regulars?
I think it was quite interesting the other day, if you listen to Angie's press conference when they spoke about the transfer market, and he said a quote where he said about if people go out the door, we'll get in people that are capable of playing in the Premier League. And what I took from that was that it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to go out and buy players. I think he'll promote. I think that he's looking. If you've seen, he's done it very gradual, but you've got to remember as well, he's only 6 months into his management. So you can't just suddenly throw 3-4 kids in and go, there you go, and all the results go haywire. He needs to keep that balance. He needs to get results at the moment. He needs to finish the season strongly. But I think that next year, if they do qualify for Europe, then I think you'll see a lot more of the blood in of the youngsters. Yeah, and I do think that he's definitely one that is keen to do that. I think also from the homegrown issues, you've got to be promoting these players anyway. So yeah, I do think there's a future. He's already given Donnelly some minutes, not much, but he's given him a few minutes. He's just given him a taste So he's not exposing them too much to it. He's throwing them in when he feels they're ready. And if you're good enough, Ange doesn't stand on ceremony. If you're good enough, you'll play. And he's not frightened of making big decisions.
We know one of the players that has now got his move for the rest of this particular rest of the season is Liz. He joined Seville on loan. That's now been confirmed. Paul, is that a decent opportunity for the player there? I mean, given the fact Werner's come in and Richarlison, of course, is in his form that he's in. He's 7 out of his last 7. Does that make sense to move Aloho on? Because again, 16 games left. Was he going to get much game time in your opinion?
And this is the thing. This. Tottenham, a lot of fans are saying, "Oh, we're short. We're short." You've got to remember, we've got 16 games. We've got no cups. We've got nothing.
Yep.
So we're going to go down to pretty much 1 a week soon. And we've got players coming back who are injured. So if these boys can go out and get 4 months, 5 months of experience and playing regularly, and Tottenham were insistent when they did these loan deals that the players have to play. There's no point us sending players on loan, and they don't play football. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's good for his development, and no one knows what he can turn out to be like. He may not make the grade, but until we push him out into different environments and test the kid, then I think that's a good thing. We have to do that.
I mean, look, I will just quickly rattle for where we are in terms of the market. Cracks, coming over to you. Bryan Gil has decided to stay. I say decided to stay. I just feel, again, we'll get Paul's insight on that as well, whether that's a club move or a player move. But ultimately, a guy that I know you've said on many times, Cracks, get on those Wagyu steaks, get him in that gym, get him pumped.
Yeah, he's, you know how much I love Bryan Gil and how much he's rated over here in Spain as a player. But the facts are facts. He's not quite stepped up to that Premier League level of player physicality. It's I sort of relate it back to music. He's Karen Carpenter, who was a fine singer, but you wouldn't put her as the lead singer of Nirvana, would you? It's and that's the problem. He's almost like a country and western singer coming into a rock and roll gig, but whether he can adapt and step up, I don't know. But there is a talent now. I think it just shows you how difficult it is to become a player, especially in the Premier League, especially in Britain. As Paul was saying, with these kids that are stepping up, my young lad wants to become a goalkeeper. I was very fortunate to be able to take him over and give him a couple of days training with Dorking Wanderers, who are National League. So this is step 5, and went to training. He's 16 years old, and he went out on the pitch, went in goal, and a couple of their players gave him a bit of a tune-up with a couple of proper shots, and he came off the pitch and he was like, oh wow. And I went, that's step 5, by the way. Now imagine what it's like to try and get into the Premier League. But to be fair to him, he sucked it up and he went, right, okay, that's what I've got to aim for. He never shied away from it. But even at that level, the intensity in training and the skill level is off the scale. Now, so to go up to the Premier League and to make it, so when people are saying, I'm not quite sure Oliver Skipp's a good player, I'm telling you, he's a good player. Just to even get there, you have got to be off the scale. And then when you get to those elites, then like that is absolutely, that's one in millions. So it's you send them off on different career paths and these loans, and they find their level, or they find their feet, or they kick on and develop. I mean, you only have to look at Gareth Bale. He was nearly out the door to Birmingham on a deal, and then all of a sudden found a love of the gym. He came back. I remember him coming back from injury, Rick, and everybody went, who's that? That's Gareth Bale. No, it's not. he went off injured with an ankle like a few weeks ago, and he was this skinny kid. Now all of a sudden, this monster's turned up.
Mm-hmm.
He just seemed to develop. Harry Kane, the same. You know, he's in one of his first games at Spurs, and he came on and he was like flushed cheeks, wasn't he, running round, and all of a sudden, bang, he just progressed because of hard work. So you never quite know. So look, this loan for Veliz might well work for him, but there's so many things that feed into a footballer away from football. Football's a tiny thing in their progression, because you don't quite know what's going on with them as a person. I mean, Hill just seems like a real Spanish homeboy, doesn't he? You know, he's just he's just a real Spanish lad that maybe not be able to settle. It's tough. You might just always be a round peg trying to go into a square hole. So you just, for his career, he may just have to find that square hole permanently. He may not be able to transfer over. Veliz the same. It's tough, you know. It's just finding that right way. Maybe sending them. Maybe they work. Maybe they don't. Maybe they come back. There's so many maybes involved and things that feed into it. You know, a player comes and like the wife and kids don't like London or don't like England, and they're moaning and crying they want to go home or they miss family. So much goes on around football, away from football, which shapes and forms how they perform on the pitch. So just so many variables, Ricky. It's crazy the amount that there is.
Yeah, there is. Pat, I want to come to you very quickly on this. We're going to try and wrap up transfers. I'm hoping Paul can give us, if he doesn't mind, 10, 15 minutes to stay with us for the Everton preview. It'll be the first time Paul might have to preview a game. Is that right with you, Paul? You okay with that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no
Top
problem.
man. Pat, let me come to you. Look, we've also got on the back of the news that Pierre-Emile Højbjerg obviously has also decided to stay at this football club. So again, we're in that situation where Pierre, Brian Hill, both committing themselves to the end of this current season. Your thoughts on those, Pat, before I get Paul's take on those players committing themselves for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean, we said it the other day, didn't we, that Pierre-Emile Højbjerg is a good player, very, very good player. He just possibly doesn't fit the system. But credit to him yesterday, because, I mean, he was brought on at half time and he changed the game. Him and Brennan Johnson added a different dimension. And for whatever reason, Bentancur and Skip weren't really up to the races. They didn't have a bad game, but when Højbjerg and Johnson came on, it completely changed the way we played, and we were fluid. And obviously we got 3 quick goals, you know, conceded a silly goal. But yeah, we were a much better team and we saw the game out. So Højbjerg, when used correctly, is a good player. Even against Manchester City, he had a good game, apart from those 2 errors, which were literally back to back. And a lot of people basically said that was how he played and they forgot all the other good bits. So good player. And as long as his head's in the game, because you could see for a moment he wasn't really happy, even when after the game and players were going around the stadium clapping the fans, he was straight down the tunnel. He wasn't really part of the team unit, but he seems like he's on board now. His head's in the game. He knows he's going to be here to the end of the season. And as long as he buckles down and plays his game, he's going to add to the squad, which is all we ask for. You know, when players come in, whether you start or come off the bench, you give your all and you contribute. So that's good. And like I said, I didn't want us to lose 1 or 2 and not bring anyone in, because essentially then you're then weaker. Yeah, you've bought in other players, but you've lost players. But at least now we've kept all the core team and we've added 2 more. So we are stronger than when the window first opened, which is all I wanted. So yeah, it's good news. I mean, obviously in the summer, he probably will leave, and hopefully we get someone that does fit the system a bit better. But I don't mind him. Really, like I said, he's a very good, technically gifted player. The teams that are linked to him show the quality of him. And yesterday he had a good game. You know, so yeah, it's good. It's good.
Can I ask you, Paul, just for your peace of mind on those couple of players, obviously Hill and of course Pierre deciding to stay. What do you take away from that? And from your understanding, was there any real genuine interest in this January window for either player?
Yeah, definitely. Very much so for Hill. Several clubs made offers to Tottenham, wanted to do a deal, but Spurs demands were a bit too much, I think. So now, of course, naturally, what the player says is, "Oh, I'm dedicated to Spurs. I'm committed to this club. I want to stay here." That's natural. They're going to do that now because the move hasn't transpired. It's the same with Pierre. Pierre's not stupid. He's been around the block. He's a 28-year-old international footballer, very experienced. Knows that he's got, I believe, a year left on his contract, doesn't he? Come the summer. So
correct. Yes, that's correct.
He knows he's just got to bide his time. If the offers that came on the table this January didn't quite tick his boxes, then of course he'll say, I'm dedicated to the project here at Tottenham. That's just the way you play the game. So, and he, like I say, he's an experienced international footballer. So he's not going to disrupt the group. He's going to get his head down. He'll do what he needs to do. He'll keep his powder dry because he's an experienced pro. He knows exactly what he's doing. In terms of him being long-term at Tottenham, I think everyone accepts that's not the case. I think he accepts that's the case. He wants to go and play regularly, so you can't blame him again because of the stage of his career. I'm not overly a fan of his, but at the same time, he has come in this season and particularly off the bench, he's made an impact. And he's done his job. So yeah, he's a steady pro, isn't he? And I don't have a particular issue with him. I don't think he's the future of Tottenham. So I can see over the next few months, I mean, it's only 16 games, but I can see that he'll sort of be that bit part and the backup. And when we need to change things, when we need to go a bit more defensive, we need to try and, solidify, he will get used. I mean, Ange isn't going to be frustrated that he's refused to go. So I don't see any problems there. I think he'll leave in the summer. With Hill, again, I don't think he's going to get close to first team action, to be honest, with players returning. From what I hear, Mana Solomon had a setback. But from what I understand, it should be about 3-4 weeks for him.
Well,
so
okay. In addition, another 3-4 weeks away, you reckon?
Yeah, so that seems to be the current feeling.
Right.
But again, you're reliant on that him not picking up another little niggly knock or the rehab not going as expected. So he'd be back in, say, a month, which you're probably down to about 12 games then. So then there's more competition. Yep. So I can't see where he'll get many opportunities, but maybe he'll come off the bench, which he isn't going to get many minutes, unfortunately. Not because you've got Timo, so you bring in Timo on loan, you're not going to not play him.
No,
so,
exactly. Yeah.
And with Brennan now getting a bit of confidence, and I don't know why he got all that stick for the last sort of.
Paul, wasn't he overplayed, Paul? I mean, you can tell me, Paul. I don't think the plan was to ever have him start the last 12, 13 games. Would have been better than him if we had all these players that were injured, not injured, and not suspended.
He's had one of the Spurs' famous hamstring problems, hasn't he? So, I found it a bit weird, really, because I always thought that he was doing quite well, and then I saw this sort of barrage of abuse that was headed his way, and I just found it a bit strange. I think he's done okay. He's 22 years of age. Yep. He's moved to a massive club.
Yep,
it's a big change for him. When you're at somewhere like Nottingham Forest, with respect to them, and you're an attacking player, the focus isn't on how you attack. It's always how many goals you're leaking. So the mistakes he would have been making in forward areas would have got glossed over a little bit because everyone's concentrating on how bad they were at the back and the defeats and the managing under pressure and all that sort of stuff. So, he certainly needs to iron out parts of his game. But when I look at him, it looks to be all coachable. It looks to be more sort of football intelligence, like when to pick up the runner, when to move into the space, when to go in behind, when to come short. Yep. And I think that people say, you can't coach that at 22. I don't think I think players are still learning at 25, 26, 27, let alone 22. Yeah. And he's come to a team that are also more on the front foot all the time. So, of course, you're going to get more of the ball, whereas at Nottingham Forest, you wouldn't get as much of the ball. So he can't hide at Tottenham, whereas at Forest, you could a little bit, So I was a bit sort of bemused by the stick he was getting, Brennan, and I think that he'll be fine. Here's another one. Yes, they spent 42.5 million quid on him, but again, the young player, massive bags of potential, and I think we should just ease up a little bit on him. To be fair,
I totally agree. Just on that point, Paul, with regards to that player, and again, I think we all back what you're saying there 100%. You know, again, young kid that I think at any time at the moment needs support rather than getting absolutely battered. You know, if anything, I'm a player needs support, it's right now. And I think, you know, genuine Spurs fans, match-going fans will know that because, again, we've stuck by some players that ultimately have had our support and maybe they shouldn't have had our support given the fact of what they've given to us as a club. But look, that's another conversation. I wonder, Paul, you know, Conor Gallagher never went away this month. And, you know, given the fact of Chelsea's financial constraints, and again, you mentioned that point earlier about Brozier and what they've and how they've let him out, given that wage structure. I mean, was we ever close, Paul, to Conor Gallagher this month? And if not, is that one you can see Spurs revisiting in the summer?
First things first, he's a player that Angie's a big fan of. I think that's widely known. I think everyone knows that. You know, it's not a secret. But Chelsea are asking 50 million quid for a lad that's going to have a year left on his contract in the summer. So, and my fear with Chelsea is that they would string us along and then last minute pull the rug from under our feet. So, and personally, and this is only my personal opinion, I'm not a massive fan of the boy. If the manager wants him, that's fine. If the data guys have done their stuff and they're saying no, he's the number one candidate, then obviously they're better judged than me. But I don't see him moving to Tottenham for them sort of sums, 50 million or even 40 million. I think if they could pick him up for 30 million, maybe.
There's also again something that operates outside actually playing football, the optics of it. That would be Chelsea selling their captain to Tottenham. Now, given
and a player that Maurizio really likes as well.
Exactly, you know, so that sends out a huge message. So that would also, you know, that could affect Chelsea in a way that could cost them a lot of money and a lot of credibility as well, because, you know, you're not just buying football players anymore, are you? No. You're buying images and you're buying public perception and you're, you know, there's so much else that feeds into everything now other than player A moves to club B and da-da-da-da. It's huge what feeds into it and the social media aspects. And, you know, Chelsea would be looking at things like, oh, hang on a minute, we've got this company that's attached to us as a sponsor, that company, they would go away, they would go back to Chelsea and go, hang on a minute, why are you selling your club captain and a lad that's come through the ranks to a club like Tottenham, who you have a fierce rivalry with, who all your fans absolutely hate as a club, and our brand is attached to your brand and your brand is doing this. I mean, it's football's almost an afterthought in the actual whole industry and business now. So all of that feeds into it as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the politics at Chelsea for Gallagher to go would be, like I say, Maurizio is a massive fan of his, so I'm not sure how that would go down. But that's if he's still there, of course, if Maurizio keeps his job, because they are woeful, aren't they? I mean, they've bought so much.
He doesn't look happy there, Paul. I'm not returning the Pochettino show, but he doesn't look happy.
He's not happy with that squad, that's for sure. He thinks a lot of them are just not good enough. And the overhaul they would need would be huge. And they've got problems with, you know, the way they've spent coming back to bite them.
Yeah.
The owners have just recently bought more shares, so they've injected 140 million quid into the club.
Right.
And I think they can put a proportion towards FFP, if I remember correctly. So yeah, they've got some real issues there. They've got a massive squad, loads of players on massive wages, long contracts. Some of them, I think I read today, someone posted a tweet that Chelsea have 13 players in contracts into the next decade, 2030.
Wow.
Which is
mad.
Is just
insane.
It's beyond. I mean, if I was a fan of theirs, I would be seriously concerned.
What a shame. Hey ho, moving on.
But honestly, on that point, Pat, we're going to come to you on outgoings. I'm going to go over
for Chelsea.
Yeah, we will. Pat, just in relation to outgoings, look, the window has now officially closed. That's for our watching audience. For our listeners on audio, it will be the day after.
Nothing happened.
And nothing happens. Obviously, Spurs did have that successful hijack that we spoke about earlier. Of course, Bergvall.
How many Premier League clubs actually bought? How many Premier League top 6 clubs actually bought someone? Apart from
Good
Tottenham.
question. I don't want to.
And I'm not talking about buying a kid that's on loan or whatever.
It's about actual senior first team player.
An actual purchase to come into your first team.
Mm.
I don't believe only
no
Tottenham
one
in the top
did.
6.
Yeah, no. City definitely didn't. Arsenal didn't.
That's how
Liverpool
bad
didn't.
the market is.
Yeah, that's crazy when you think about it.
That's how scared clubs are. So we've gone through a whole January window, and only Tottenham have bought one first team player.
Paul, actually, whilst we got you, you know this whole PSR stuff, which has got clubs quaking in their boots. Did Levy, because
not Daniel,
did Levy actually foresee this, or was it just a stroke of luck because we've been so prudent and like basically so tight spending, or did he kind of know this was coming?
I think he would tell you that he knew, and it's a perfectly well executed plan. And everything is exactly how he thought it would transpire. And, I'm sure that he's very, very excited because it does put Tottenham in a very strong position to be able to steal a march on rivals. In terms of, like I say, in terms of even young talent, if you're buying two young kids at 22 million pound, that's 44 million pound. A lot of clubs can't go to that. I mean, you look at the transfers in Europe. If you look at the players that are moving around, you're looking at Lazio trying to buy a guy from Plymouth.
Yeah,
I mean, if I'd said that to you 3 years ago, you'd laugh. Yeah. You'd say, "What?" The whole way football shops now and the way the transfer market's going is a massive, massive change.
Mm. Outgoings, the Spurs finishing the window, of course. We saw Hugo Lloris leave permanently for the club, which feels like a long time ago now. Eric Dyer, Ivan Perisic both departing on loans to Bayern Munich and Hajduk respectively. Reguilon, Jed Spence, Japhet Tanganga, Alfie Devine, of course, all of them returned from loans and then were sent out on new ones. We saw Ashley Phillips, Matthew Craig, Josh Kelly also head out on loans. And again, we see on this deadline day here for the watching audience that Alova Liz, as we said earlier, did complete that move to Seville. I mean, Paul, strategically, how impressed have you been in the way Spurs have got players out of this window? Because whilst there's been general praise for the recruitment Spurs have done in terms of incomings in the last 12, 18 months, I think the one thing that has been levelled at the recruitment team is that there's not been enough focus in terms of moving players on. Well, I think you can say this window Spurs have done that, but they have still got that issue of players being out on loan, the likes of Ndombele, of course, and, the players, the likes of Spence, Tanganga, Reguilon. I mean, how would you rate the outgoings this window for you?
Yeah, I think I rate it very, very. They've done very well. I think Daniel will be doing cartwheels because if you look at the wages he's going to save from this summer onwards, you've lost Harry's £350,000 plus a week. You've lost Ivan's 175 or whatever. You're going to lose. You've lost others. You lost Hugo. Something like my rough calculations are about 4 million quid a month better off.
Wow.
Which,
that's crazy.
That's yes. And now you've got much more of a sort of, you've got players there now that the senior pros, if you like, aren't as influential because they're simply not there. So they've got these younger, hungry players that are on half the money, sometimes a third or even a quarter. So I think Daniel will be delighted with the way that the data guys and the recruitment guys have managed to shift players out. And like I say, the wage bill alone will drop significantly, which again helps them with the FFP, and it gives them another stronger position when they're bidding for players to be able to offer. Tottenham have always paid good wages, in fairness to them. They've got one of the best bonus schemes in the Premier League. So they've always been incentivised, the players at Spurs. So, yeah, Daniel must be cock-a-hoop at the moment, to be fair.
You know what? I'm going to ask the guys as we look to close out this and move to Everton to rate the window. Before I do, Paul, there've been many asking me this question because, again, mate, you're so heavily... I know you hate me saying this. You're so heavily relied upon in terms of the Spurs community out there.
I know, Any aggregator's dream.
No pressure, Paul. No pressure.
I once said that Daniel slept with one eye open and it got aggregated. You know,
we didn't do that, did we, Paul?
no.
It wasn't from us, was it?
I literally sometimes I forget, you see, because I'm in my mentions and I'm having just a run of the mill conversation like you would with someone in the pub, and you might say something that is just off the cuff, and like next thing it's aggregated as fact, and it's everyone's. But you said this was going to happen. You said this. The famous one, which I'll never live down, is that Daniel Levy and the club were telling all agents, and it was well known within the agent circle, that in the summer just gone, they were going to rip up contracts. They were fed up with it. They were going to, the likes of Hugo were going to get paid off. They were just going to offer them a settlement and get rid of them. Of course, it didn't happen. I happened to mention it in conversation to a real good guy on Twitter, and next thing it aggregated. And of course, I could say 100 things that are right, but the one thing you get wrong will always come back to bite. Well, that's fine. That's the nature of the beast, I guess.
The life of social media, I tell you.
Yeah.
XA, what a platform. Any Paul that got away this window? I mean, you've been very clear of the fact that before you answer that Spurs have had a clear alignment. They know what they're looking for. There's a real focus now in terms of not just this window, but what they're looking to do in the summer. You spoke about that recruitment team that, again, we should be excited about. You've told us with Ange, he's in a good place. Anyone that got away this window, Paul, for you?
No, the club didn't miss anyone.
Okay.
They wanted the centre back. They had a list of centre backs. They had a list of attacking players. They had something like 10 attackers that they were focusing on. So, and people forget that basically once the data guys compile a list, it's based on the criteria that the manager has asked for. So you then have to marry into that. If there's 6 guys on that list, and then you meet the first choice guy, and he's an arsehole, the manager thinks, well, actually didn't take too well to him. The 6 on that list aren't necessarily in an order of priority. They're 6 capable of what you've asked them to deliver.
Right. Okay.
So the manager then can meet the personality. He can get to see the person behind it. He knows what he's going to bring to the squad footballing wise, because he's already decided that he's good enough to be on the shortlist. So when people say, "Oh, you missed out your first centre back target was Tapsoba," there isn't necessarily a first choice. There's 3 or 4 names that get to the top of the list that are of equal standing, and it's then when you meet the player and you get a feel for how he comes across and what he believes he can offer you and what you can offer him, that's when you sort of press the button. And Van der Ven was the one they wanted after meeting the player.
Isn't it pleasing to hear this? Isn't it pleasing to hear this? I mean, Paul, it does feel like there's a coherent structure.
Not just
because what they're doing.
But that's how recruitment works, Ricky. In the real world, that's how recruitment works.
I know, but it's Tottenham.
It is fascinating as well. It is fascinating to, it's, because of what I do with the ex-players, a lot of this, Paul's leaning on an open door. I've already heard this, there was an ex-player that once said to me, the club could go after 2 players, and if player A they quite fancy more than player B, but player B could actually offer them more on a commercial basis as well, they might well go with player B over player A. Not all the time, but will do. And they will meet with the people and they will do some due diligence on family and what's going on around them and the people they knock about with and go, da-da-da-da-da-da. And as we've seen with other players that have just fallen off the edge of the cliff because, there's all of a sudden you'll hear on Monday morning, so-and-so was in Club X on Saturday night after the game. And you do know he knocks about with this lad and that lad, and all of this feeds in. So it's fascinating. And I don't think people quite realise that. I've tried to tell people this on the show over the last 2 or 3 years, but then Paul comes along and absolutely nails it, and then so it just shows you how difficult it sometimes is to buy players. And when you go, oh, but we missed out on him and he's a fantastic player. But the fact of the matter is, he might be a complete shit as a person, you
Yeah,
know.
and
he comes into that dressing room and just upsets everything, and you know, and listen, you know, he's a nightmare to deal with. He's a, you know, you're gonna have problems galore with him because like his girlfriend's just like this and that, and she'll if she goes out with the wives and girlfriends of the other players, they'll end up hating her, and because she hates her and she hates her, that will feed over into the. We all know it. We all do it with our own lives, don't we? With like, you know, Mrs. Cracknell go, don't like her much, and then all of a sudden it just makes things a bit orcs between you and that person, doesn't it? You know,
don't get any bloody started, Cracks.
But what goes on in our lives, you know, as butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers, goes on in their lives as footballers. So all of this feeds into the thinking behind buying players, because they have to fit in as people. It's you, but I think you have to buy the person before the footballer. You absolutely have to do that.
Would you say there's more of that going into that, Paul? That consideration about the player profile? That seems to be one that I feel with Tottenham over the last 18 months. They've got a squad there now that is so likeable that, you know, again, we made this point in the last pod with Pat as well, that, you know, you look at that team now, you just love all the players. There's a real connect with not only just the players, but the manager. I mean, that's been critical, right? It feels like that's been a massive approach from the club as well.
It's the same with it. Like if you were running your own business and, you know, you've got two candidates shortlisted for a job interview and they come and meet you, and then all of a sudden one of them is saying, yeah, but I can go and get X amount more from your rival and all that sort of stuff. It gives you an idea of the character of the person you're dealing with, and all of a sudden that can be very off-putting. So on paper, when we see the link, we go, we only ever look at the footballer's ability. So when we see a player is linked, we go, oh, he's fantastic, we have to sign him. We don't look beyond that. And it's not until the club meet the player and they have they get a feel as to what they actually want from the club and vice versa, that you can make that call. And that's why some deals do get far down the line, and then all of a sudden Spurs or any club pull the plug and you don't understand why. It's 9 times out of 10 it's because they've started to move goalposts, and then you start questioning the motives. If all of a sudden this guy that told you a week ago he's keen to sign, you start to question the motives. If all of a sudden he wants 20 grand a week more, you know, what is he coming to the club for? You know, so there's things that go on like that, and that's how deals collapse. And then agents may move goalposts on certain fees and things like that. So yeah, the deals are so difficult to get done, and when you're dealing with, you're not just handing over, you know, 100 quid. You're handing over millions of pounds. So you have to be absolutely certain that you're going to do that in good faith and get what you want out of it.
Paul, it's been fascinating. Pat, I'm going to come to you, then we're going to look to Everton. Pat, rate me the window in your opinion. In terms of incomes and outgoings, what would you give it out of 10?
This is tricky, you know, because if I think about this compared to previous windows, I would say it's quite lackluster. But then when you look at the players that we've actually got rid of, like your Eric Dyers and your Hugo Lloris's, people that were just sitting there, not really part of the team, not really going to play. They've all been sent off with, you know, with respect and obviously they've all got good moves, so to speak. And then you look at the players we brought in, a quality centre back in Dragusin, who, if Romero or Van der Ven get injured or need to be rotated, the level of the player coming in doesn't drop or dip. And Werner, who I keep saying is a good player and has contributed already and will contribute and cause teams problems. So I'd probably give it a 6 or 7 in previous windows, but with what we've done compared to what other teams have done in not just the Premier League in Europe, I'd probably give it an 8, because we've actually strengthened where a lot of teams haven't. Arsenal haven't done anything. Man City haven't done anything. Liverpool haven't done anything. Newcastle haven't done anything. Villa have bought in a player. We'll see how good he is. They bought him in for Middlesbrough, I think. But again, we're yet to see what he's going to be like in the Premier League. But when you look at all the teams that are there or around us, they've done nothing. So, yeah, I'd probably give it an 8. I think it's very pleasing. We didn't scramble around. The players have been in for a while and they're already settled, which is another good thing. It's not a deadline day moving and you still got to give them 2, 3, 4 weeks to acclimatize. These guys are already part of the system and playing already. So I think it's been really good. Obviously, yes, we've got a few out on loan. Valise has gone as well. And we've kept a few that were possibly on the fringes of coming or going. So, Jed Spence came back and went back out. Tanganga came back and went back out. So we've done quite well, to be fair. We've done a lot. So, yeah, I'll give it an 8.
Okay. Paul, I'll ask you, in your opinion, rate the window. What would you give it?
I think the out's better than the ins in terms of a number. I think they've been ruthless with the outs, aren't they? They've called people back off of loan who weren't playing to get them out on loan to play, which again is a different approach for Spurs. They've been ruthless with the outs in that sense. So I think for the outs, you can almost give them sort of a high 8.5 or something.
Okay.
With the ins, they got what they wanted. The manager wanted a centre back and he wanted another attacker. He feels he's got enough to get by in midfield at the moment. If a deal had fallen in their lap, they'd have done it. So that was a nice position to be in.
Yep.
So I think probably a 7.5 for the ins because the manager's got what he wanted in terms of positions and in terms of squad strength. They've been unlucky with the injuries, the midfielders. I mean, the fact that last night Rodrigo and James Maddison, that was the first time they played together for 25 games.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, that's just, that's terrible luck. They've had injuries all over the show. So I think that they've done well. Those boys are coming back now. So they've only got 16 games. Roll on the summer, basically, when we try and sign some gems.
Out of interest, Paul, players like the Celso, Richie, do you think those kind of players will be looked at the summer again to see if this is still the right football club for them? You made no bones about it for you, Richarlison. Whilst he's in a really good vein of form, long term, is he that genuine number 9 they want for Harry? Do you feel again we'll analyse that situation come the summer?
He could be. He's really posing them a question now, isn't he? Because he's turned his form around. He's had the operation, which seems to have been a major benefit to him.
Yep.
He's scoring goals. He looks, like I said earlier, I think he looked more intelligent last night than I've seen him previously. Like he's sort of calmed down now. Maybe before he felt that he was so under pressure he had to deliver all the time that it was making him too nervous. I'm not sure, but no, he's definitely turned a corner. Whether that's significant enough, I think that would depend on who becomes available. If all of a sudden a striker becomes available that they really desperately want to move for, then maybe he goes out. But it's a tough one to call with Richarlison at the moment. With Lo Celso, I just don't think it's ever going to work at Tottenham for one thing or the other. He's obviously very talented, but he's also injury prone. We can't rely on him. Whether it's just bad luck. He's had, what's he been there now? 4 years?
Yeah, unbelievably, he has been. Years? I mean, obviously not consistently, but he has been here, signed for 4 years. Yeah.
Has he made it? He's probably not made 75 appearances, has he? I don't know.
No, don't believe so yet. No,
I've not looked.
No.
But I just don't think that you can carry someone like that on a wage of probably, I don't know, £100,000 a week or something. So I think if the right opportunity came for him to move on, he probably would, and that might suit everyone all round, to be fair.
Yeah.
And then we need to be looking at who we can bring in. So a centre mid and possibly another attacker, but certainly a centre back, potentially left sided.
And you feel, Paul, that work is already underway in terms of
100%. Yeah. The recruitment, they can look at a player. I mean, they studied that gift Orban for 9 months, nearly a year, and eventually they decided that they didn't think he was big enough for the Premier League, so they didn't do it. But they'll look at players now for not necessarily even next summer, but the windows after that as well.
One player that obviously has remained, and whether he gets minutes or not, is Ryan Sessegnon. Again, I think many that would have ideally liked to have seen him maybe go out and get some game time between now and the end of the window. Last thing I'm asking it, Paul, surprised Sess hasn't gone out for a loan, or is just not really been the interest there to get him that loan?
If you're right, so if you're a club, Ricky, that's looking at loaning in a player for the last 4 months, most clubs that are looking to loan in players are clubs in difficulty in the league.
And need players fit.
And you can't rely on the lad. And that's just, it's a crying shame for him on a human aspect. It's terrible to have such a talent, because clearly he was a very talented footballer. When he was at Fulham and he was playing as a left winger almost. He was scoring goals every other week. He was a fantastic player, and he had this protracted move to Tottenham, which it seemed like an eternity. It took about 2 years to happen, but he finally got to Tottenham, and he's had zero luck. So on a human level, I feel sorry for the lad. On a footballing level, he looks like a rabbit in the headlights these days. When he plays, he looks scared to take a man on. He looks concerned that he's going to suffer an injury. To me, anyway.
Well, I think, Paul, you're saying what we've all said on here for a number of years. It's a real shame.
Like I say,
it's the reality.
On a human level, I feel for the kid, because to get to the level he's got to, that journey will have been so difficult. But on a professional level, and for Tottenham, we can't become a charity case, unfortunately. No. And we're just going to have to move the lad on.
Yeah.
That's my view on it.
I think we'd echo those thoughts. Look, again, we shall see in terms of how this window has panned out, because those players are going to be featuring in action, of course, for Tottenham against Everton. What we are going to do, we are going to go for our final break of the show here for our listeners and audio. Can I just thank this wonderful panel? It's been a late show here. We're joined by Patrick Tyrant, Richard Cracknell, and Paul O Keefe. No, it's not a robot. No, it isn't Bill Nicholson.
the whole Bill Nick thing is really funny, because basically, you'll remember, Rick, because you joined Twitter probably when I tell you.
1947, was it?
Oh my God, it feels like it. So 14 years ago, nobody had a profile picture, because nobody took selfies in them days.
No, exactly.
It wasn't a thing. So anyway, I stuck Bill Nick up, and over the years, it sort of got to be people. That's how they recognised my account. So exactly. So I thought, you can't change it, because this is how you're known on.
So you are, Paul. Yeah, I tell you what, we'll be screwed now.
Yeah. It's gone on for sort of 14 years, and I haven't changed my pick once in 14 years. So I shan't do it now, because it's basically who I am. It's great fun anyway.
Yeah. Well, I shan't change mine, because, again, I've aged 20 years since I've had 2 kids. So I'll leave mine where it is for now, I think, until they do find me out on Catchfish, I tell you. Look, again, we're going to look ahead to Everton to come. I must say, guys, thank you so much for all your support. I think we had about 5,000 or 6,000 of you across all of our platforms watching this live. So, again, thank you so much for all your incredible support. Given the fact Spurs haven't done a huge amount on this deadline day, but as I mentioned earlier, Spurs have stolen a march on Barcelona. Lucas Bergvall is Spurs' player. He will join the club in the summer, but he'll remain at his parent club at this moment in time. But it's a young player, exciting future. Really, really looks an exciting prospect for those that, again, I'm checking him out on YouTube and the compilations. One that you should be excited about, because, again, as we end this window, we mentioned that point. Spurs, of course, have beaten Bayern Munich and Barcelona, the 2 players in this window where, again, you take your mind back 6-7 months ago and where we was at. My God, it feels like a different world right now. Look, Everton to come at the weekend. It's an opportunity for Spurs to build on the progress they made in that win against Brentford. Crazy, chaotic, and second half that saw Spurs get over the line. They're playing an Everton side that, again, are not in the greatest amount of form at the moment. They've slipped into the bottom 3, following, of course, that draw in the week away to Fulham. And look, it's an Everton side that have failed to win their last 5 league matches. And you have to feel that for Tottenham going to Everton, they've got a fairly decent record up at Goodison Park, that this is now a real opportunity to really cement their place in the top 4, given the fact, of course, with Tottenham now, they're in that top 4 now, above Villa in terms of the goal difference. We'll start with you, Cracks. How big a game is Everton away to, again, test the mentality of this group? And do you feel they're capable of coming through it, Cracks?
16 to go, Rick. 16 cup finals, because we've got nothing else to play for now.
Can't say cup finals, they're banned on it. We can't use the word cup final, can we?
16, maybe don't call it a cup final.
Call them 4th rounds. Actually, don't call them 4th rounds. We got knocked out of them as well. Call them 3rd rounds, 2nd rounds.
There's absolutely no gimmies in the Premier League. Not one, home or away. There is not a gimme. You have got to be absolutely at it to get a result. You have to. If you're slightly off of it, 5% off of it and go even to Sheffield United, you're going to get punished, as we saw in the Cup last season. So we have to go up there. This team's got to grow up a little bit. Like last night, we come out in 7 minutes, absolutely blew them away, foot on the throat. When you got the foot on the throat, press harder. And we didn't, and we let them back in. And at the end, like, we're absolutely scrabbling just to keep that slim one goal, that what difference that got us over the line. But got over the line, we did. Now that is a difference in Spurs. So go there Saturday. We're more than capable of doing it if we're efficient and ruthless. That's what we've got to be now for the rest of the season. Just efficient, be ruthless. And when you're in the ascendancy, and we will be up there because they're fragile. They are a fragile team, and we're riding high at the moment. So in those moments, take them, and when you've taken them, take more. Go more. So we're more than capable of going now and winning. But the Premier League is the most popular league in the world. It's not the greatest technically, but it is the greatest to watch because the reasons I've just said. It's so entertaining. Anyone can beat anyone. So if we go there and we're at it, we win it. It's as simple as that. We got the personnel, and as I said, they're shaky. Their confidence is down. So if we do go there and get a goal, go again. You've got to go again, and we've got to find that ruthless streak. Once you've actually got your noses in front, maybe if you can go 2-0 up, then you've got to be mature, and you've got to be smart, and you've got to think about managing the game out. Well, that will come with the young players. They'll learn. I think Ange will get that into them. So, we're more than capable of going now and getting the win on Saturday. So, I don't know. Would you want a prediction, Rick?
Hold it. We'll come back around for the prediction in just a second. We will.
Okay. But we can do it. Yeah. We can absolutely go up there. I think Spurs have always been Spurs in some respects. Of we could go anywhere and win, but we could also go anywhere and lose as well. So as long as we are absolutely, as long as we're at it, we win up there Saturday. We win it.
Correct. I'm going to come for your prediction in just a second. Pat, will come to you. Everton, they have won one of their last 6 and not scored in their last 2 there. King Huddle very kindly providing us with that. And again, it's an Everton side that, let's be honest about it, without the points deduction, Pat, they would be sitting pretty mid-table, which would really be for them a decent season, given the fact of Sean Dyche and the fact what he had to walk into. And I think, again, he just celebrates his year anniversary of being in charge there. And again, that guy, I mean, we moan about Tottenham at times, but what a firefighter of a job he's had there. Walked in, kept them up. Now in a situation where he's having to fight and battle a point deduction. What do you make of Everton, and just what kind of Everton side do you feel will be facing at the weekend, given the fact they're not in the greatest run of form at the moment?
They're not in the greatest run of form. I mean, I hate these 12:30 Saturday early kickoffs.
That's a great point. Great point.
I hate them so much because obviously if they go well, fantastic. Your weekend's set. You can put your feet up. And then whatever happens with the other results, you're cool. You're just chilling, and But if it goes wrong, it just ruins your whole weekend. Like, you're just pissed the whole Saturday, the whole Sunday, and if it goes wrong, it's just that stroke of luck or sod's law. Every other team will win their game. It's just how it is. But I do go into this game feeling confident. I said it on here on the Brentford preview that we would score 3 goals. I predicted a 3-1. Annoyingly, we would have had that if Udogie didn't make that pass and make that mistake. But it happens, innit? But I said we'd win 3-1. Lots of people in the comments are saying, we're going to score. How are we going to score 3 goals? We haven't scored. We're a good team. And, if we get it together, we should beat Everton. I respect Everton on their day. They're a decent team. Goodison Park is never easy. But like you said, Ricky, when you look at it, 18th in the league at the moment on 18 points. Yeah. They had 10 points stopped, so they would have been on 28 points, which would have put them in 12th. So even with the 10 points stopped, they're a decent team. But, they're no world beaters. With our team and our players, we should have more than enough. they've got some good players. Dwight McNeil's 2 goals, 4 assists. Every time I watch him, he looks lively. Deco as well has been contributing from midfield, 6 goals and 2 assists in 18 games. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, obviously he's always a threat, but he's not really been at the races this season. He's only got 3 goals, no assists in 18 games. And then Jared Braithwaite, he's the centre-back, really good young player, 21 years old. He's impressed me every time I've watched him. So I'll be watching him obviously closely from seeing what he does from a defensive standpoint. Played 19 games, kept 7 clean sheets. So very decent. But yeah, we've got more than enough to beat them. I expect us to beat them. It'll be a tough game, don't get me wrong. Like Cracker said, you can't be at 95% or even 92% in the Premier League. You've got to be at 100%. And I think as good as we are, we do show our immaturity. Like we let Brentford rattle us. Like it's all well and good, us bantering and saying we got the last laugh and all of that. And it was a good game, don't get me wrong. But there's no way that we should be letting a Neil Maupay get under our skins. Do you know what I mean? Like that shouldn't be happening. Ivan Toney talking. We should just say whatever and just get on them, just play them off the park. We let these guys who they can't give it to us on a footballing standpoint, but they know they can do the dark arts and they can get under our skins, and then they can make it more of a 50-50 in a battle. Like, the amount of times, I can't remember, I think it was Norgard. He fouled our players about 7 or 8 times in a row and he got away with it.
What was that geezer? That was an orange card, Pat.
Patrick,
he was already on the yellow.
9 fouls. 9 fouls post his yellow card.
That's 9. What I'm saying. And that's what these teams with less ability will do. So we just got to stay on our game. This is probably the one thing that irks me about Ange. As much as I love the guy and I really respect him, and I love everything about him, I do wish at some point he would be a bit of a bastard and just call out the refs. Because every manager that does that, they always seem to get the decisions. Because Ange has been so diplomatic and he's just been decent about it, but we've been wronged so many times. Like, if you look at that Richarlison goal that got chalked off, Richarlison didn't touch the defender. The defender went down. Obviously, they waved it off. There was no appeal from our players, our manager, and VAR just quickly looked at it and just said, play on. But we need to sometimes be a bit more
Patrick, I've got an idea for you.
Yeah.
Jose Mourinho's now knocking around unemployed, right?
Not him again.
Why don't we bring him in as Ange's assistant manager so he can go and get in the fourth official's ear?
Yeah,
when Ange stays as the good guy, we could have good cop, bad cop, couldn't we, in the dugout? Yeah. And get Ange into the referee's room and in the fourth official's ear, because he does that brilliantly.
Oh yeah.
So we get the silk and smooth of Ange, and then the absolute iron fist
of Mourinho.
I thought you were going to say Jose for number 1. That's why I was like, no. Yeah, what you said makes a lot of sense, because that's the one thing I feel we're missing. We're too nice in that respect, and we're kind of getting shot in the foot now. So yeah, but as long as we stay to our game and play our football,
that's the key,
and stick to our principles, we should beat Everton. I don't want to jinx it, but I think we'll win quite comfortably.
Paul, come over to you. One player that we're hoping is to be back and available is, of course, Pat Matassar. Do you think he'll be available, and do you think he might start the game, or again, just a case of seeing how he performs in training, or if he is in training the next couple of days?
Yeah, you'd imagine that he'll train
Friday.
When did they come out? They came out on
Tuesday. Tuesday.
So therefore, he'd have travelled back Wednesday. He'd have been given Thursday off, so he should report Friday. So he should report tomorrow for training. Hopefully, he'll get through, but they'll only have one session.
Yeah,
because obviously of the early kickoff, so then they'll probably fly up in the afternoon. So yeah, I was just looking at Everton actually in the league table. Unbelievably, they've lost as many games as Newcastle, which Newcastle you consider them to be sort of pushing towards the sort of top 6, don't you? And they've only lost one more game than Chelsea. So I don't think we can take them lightly. And Patrick mentioned the early kickoff. Oh, absolute nightmare, especially away. Just complete. You have to change all the build up, the way the players prepare. It is a nightmare. I hate them, and Jurgen Klopp has a fan in me on them ones. But
only on that one.
About the only thing I do support him on. But honestly, the 12:30 kickoff needs to be abolished. It's a load of bollocks, to be honest. It's awful. On
that point, I think we should go to predictions. Let's start with Pat. Let's start with Pat here. We'll end on Paul. Pat, what are you going to go for?
2-0. I'm going to go brave and say that we keep a clean sheet for once. So, yeah,
Okay.
2-0.
Nice. Okay. Cracked. Or crack, should I say tonight?
Crack.
Uncrack.
I'll take a 2-1. They'll squirm one from someone. They'll get one out of desperation, and but we've got enough to get over the line. 1-2. We'll win. We win that Saturday.
And no pressure, Paul, but 99.99999% what comes out of your mouth is normally right. So on that basis,
be aggregated. my prediction will be aggregated.
Yeah, that'll be it. That'll be going right now.
Paul, no pressure, Paul. But if you get this wrong 2 years down the line, somebody on Twitter will go, "You said when we played Everton away, we'd win."
Well, we have to start Spurs on -1 because we concede every game, so we know we're going to concede. So we'll go for a very narrow victory, or I can see us getting a point. We're going to get a point at least. Let's go for that.
Okay, look at him playing safe there.
A point at least.
Paul keeping that reputation going. Going to say for those that don't know where to find Paul, of course is on X. Paul, you on anywhere else these days? Just X, is it still?
I've got these other networks, but I don't use them. I've got Instagram and I've got other stuff, but I don't particularly promote anything apart from Twitter, because Twitter is my football sort of haven where I go to be shouted at and shout at people mainly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or Bill Nicholson for those that are out there.
You do know he's on Mumsnet, don't you? Marjorie Smith. He's Marjorie Smith, a housewife from Doncaster. He's on there.
It's not a bad character profile, is it? Bill Nicholson.
Every time Elon goes a bit rogue, which is quite often, these new social network things appear, don't they? So I think I have to go and sign up to get my username. So I've signed up to about 20 sites and never posted.
But they're in the background just in case. I've got
threads, but I've never looked at it, to be honest.
You know what? Listen, Paul, final one I've got to ask you, mate. I've got to say, there's been so much love that's come in for you tonight. And it's at a point when we say the point here that, Spurs in the window have, done what they've needed to do. On that basis, Paul, what do you deem to be a success for Spurs this season, in your opinion? What would be successful?
At the beginning of the season, I had them down to miss out on Europe, to be quite honest with you. I thought they'd end up 7th or 8th.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, I just felt there was a lot of work to do, and to be fair to them, they've done a hell of a lot of work. The summer signings were very impressive. Looking at it now, with the way that the game's panned out with other clubs that are failing, so Chelsea haven't come good, which we thought they might. Newcastle have struggled with European competition as well as trying to maintain their league position. Aston Villa have sort of sneaked up from nowhere, although I don't massively rate them, to be honest. I think we could pip them. So I think realistically for Tottenham, they need to be looking at certainly getting into the top 6, which is the Europa spots. And you never know, they could maintain a run to stay into sort of 3rd or 4th, which would be an amazing turnaround in Ange's first season.
Which again, I'm sure,
when you've lost the best striker on the planet as well.
Yeah.
Well, the great thing is, underestimate that.
The great thing is, Paul, we're on this very, very quickly because I know time's pressed against us here, but the great thing about Ange is that he sets no expectation, no barrier, no limitation. He just allows us to play, and ultimately where we go, right? There's no real limit set on that. How refreshing is that, Paul, given the fact that the last few years to have a manager that ultimately says, look, we're there, we're bang there, we're in and around it.
Yeah, I think the previous managers, they lived off that reputation though. So you can't have an Antonio Conte not expecting to finish in the top 4, because that's the sort of package you buy. That's the expectation you put on him. Whereas I don't think we've put the expectation on Ange to deliver top 4 this season, because we've understood that we've gone through a really transitional phase with 2 managers that have sort of caused carnage in the club. So I think for him that he doesn't have the burden of an Antonio Conte or Jose Mourinho, because the expectation level isn't necessarily as high. Yeah. So I think that works to our advantage, and his nature also gives the players confidence in that they're not feeling that they're under pressure constantly and being pushed to the limits like they would have been under a manager who's got such a massive reputation as an Antonio Conte. So I think that marries up well. I think you get a pass this season almost. So I think next year, then people start to ask questions. Okay, mate, this isn't a new project now. You're 18 months into it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I think our expectations will grow with him during his managership. So
it's
at the moment,
his second album, isn't it? In your sixth album deal,
yeah,
Paul. It really is. And I've always said that Angie's light shines brighter maybe than it actually is because of the darkness of Conte. So he looks like he's done even more incredible work because he's just so different from Conte. So your perception of him as a manager is raised over and above what he actually is because of where we all was and where we was all feeling with Conte. Now that will lessen in that second season because the honeymoon is over and the memory and the darkness of Conte has gone. So probably Angie's more difficult season is next season.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think also what as fans, you want transparency, whether that be from the hierarchy, whether it be from the manager, whether it be from players, and you want to feel that they want the same things as you, and you want to hear that. You want them just to be honest. If a player's out injured, he's out injured. Just tell us he's out injured. You if you can't afford to buy a player, or you're saying because of the structure in place we do not shop in this market, then that's fine. We understand that, and I think where Angie's clever, he's very good with the media. Obviously, he's very good with fans. He's very transparent. 18 months down the line, if you have a bad spell, that's where you'll see that whether he changes tone. I mean, that's when we can really tell. So, like Crackers refers to, the honeymoon period is now, and it's great, and everything looks rosy. But the real test is in 18 months, I believe.
Well, listen, the great thing is at the moment we have to focus just on the next few now, and fingers crossed the club do get themselves into some form of European qualification, which, again, I totally agree with you, Paul. Given 48 hours before the start of the season, losing Harry Kane, the mood around the football club, I don't need to tell you, you know that mood. So, look, I've got to say, guys, probably one of the most enjoyable shows I've ever done on Last Word on Spurs. It's been really, really refreshing. Paul, the face mask is uplifted. Except to be spotted now when you're in Waitrose, M&S. You still get to all the high class here.
I expect to lose thousands of bitterly disappointed followers.
Well, I don't think Crackers deny the fact it's a hunt coming through. He went through the Graham Norton Nick zone there. And I've got to say, it's an absolute pleasure having you with us here. Hope you won't be the first or the last time, Paul. Like I say, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you so much for your time. Been a real pleasure. Look, from Pat, from Cracks, from myself, from Paul, from Simone, and unfortunately Lee McQueen. Lee beaten by the traffic. We wish Lee all the very, very best. We'll catch up with him soon. Guys, thank you so much for all your support during this transfer window. Not, of course, just today, but throughout what's been a really, really interesting January window. I think many of us didn't expect Spurs maybe to move as early as they did, although Paul might have done. He knows his intel. But look, it's been great in the way it's ended. Look, thank you so much for all your support. Guys, let's get behind the players now. As Crack says, 16, not cup final, games left for Tottenham to go. From us all here at Last Word on Spurs, please keep safe, keep well, and as always, come on you Spurs.